Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook Library, a sanctuary of stories where fan fictions come alive, where ancient legends echo from the East and Western worlds awaken with wonder. Settle in. Your journey begins now.
Harry Potter in Marvel Chapter 1 The End and the Beginning. Harry Potter. A pair of emerald green eyes snapped open. The owner of said eyes sat up immediately, his head constantly moving so he could look all around while sweat poured down his forehead. His hair was flattened down. He looked around. On his right was a bed. He was not really sure why he kept it. He never used it. His hands came up and rubbed the tiredness out of his face. He sat still with his face in his hands for several minutes before he was finally ready to stand up. He stood up and stretched before letting out a yawn. He reached down and picked up his cushion and blanket before throwing them onto the bed. He shook his head and walked out of the room. Before he walked into the bathroom, he closed and locked the door. He walked to the bathroom. After he took a piss, he walked to the sink. He washed his hands and slapped cold water onto his face several times. He looked up at the mirror in front of him. He saw himself look back. His hair was messy. It was always messy. It looked wild, as if he had just been in large wind. He had gotten that from his father. However, the one thing he did not get from his father was the color of his hair. White as freshly fallen snow. He knew he got his share of odd looks due to his hair color, but found that he really did not care. There was only so much time somebody could put into worrying about what others thought before they decided it was not worth the effort. His green eyes, those bright emerald orbs that he got from his mother, slowly dimmed in color. They started shifting from green to gray, a color he did not get from his mother. He pulled out a toothbrush and gently poured some toothpaste onto it. He did not really have to do it. There were quicker and easier ways to clean his teeth, but he wanted to. If for no other reason than to waste time and give himself something to do. After cleaning his teeth, he washed his face again. The boy who lived. A voice whispered into his ear. He did not want to turn. He knew that the one who the voice belonged to was not there. He never was, but he did turn. He was not sure if he did it just to prove to himself that he was alone, or simply survival instincts that told him not to take chances and make sure, or perhaps simply because it was just a habit. When he looked, he saw that he was, as he expected, completely alone. Harry splashed water on his face once more before he exited the bathroom. He walked to his kitchen and began preparing his breakfast. His apartment might not be the biggest or flashiest, but he did like the homey feel he got from it. It was a single bedroom apartment. Harry's bedroom was rather impersonal, as it pretty much just had a bed, windows, clothes closet, a desk, a chair, a nightstand, and a laptop on the desk, and that was it. His bathroom was a simple bathroom. Not ridiculously clean, nor was it at all dirty. Just a simple bathroom. Harry's kitchen was also a simple kitchen with all the necessities a kitchen needed, plus a white marble kitchen bar, but Harry barely ever used it. The kitchen was joined with the living room. Harry felt himself get nudged slightly and looked down to see what was currently his best and only friend. "Hey, Padfoot," Harry said before he took his food and walked into the living room, followed by Padfoot, Harry's furry black dog. Harry sat on his sofa and placed his food on the coffee table in front of him. As Harry began eating, Padfoot jumped up on the sofa and laid down next to him. "Let me finish eating, then I will get you breakfast," Harry said. Padfoot let out a small bark before he placed his head on Harry's lap. Harry snorted with amusement but assigned his non-eating hand to petting Padfoot while he ate his breakfast with the other. Once he was done with his breakfast, he picked up his breakfast and stood up. Padfoot whined at the loss of contact. "I am getting your breakfast." Harry rolled his eyes as he walked towards the kitchen and dropped his plates into the sink. Before he could do anything else, he heard a knock on the door. Harry quickly washed and dried his hands before he walked up to the door. He opened it to reveal a pretty blonde-haired girl who was giving him a shy smile. "Hi, Alexis." Harry smiled at her. Alexis was the 19-year-old daughter of Harry's landlord. She also had a bit of a crush on him. "UHHI, Harry." Alexis smiled. She gave him a small wave before she quickly brought her hand back down. How are you?" she asked. "I am fine. How about you?" Harry asked. "I am good. My mother wanted me to tell you that she's will be busy the next collection date, so you can pay this month's rent with next month's." "Well, thank you for letting me know." Harry nodded. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Harry asked. No. Wait, actually, I am going to go to a party later today with my friends. We are going to a bar. I was wondering if you wanted to come," she said with a hopeful look. "Sorry," Harry said in an apologetic manner. "But I do have plans today," Harry said. hoping she did not ask what plans because that meant he would have to come up with plans. While she was a good-looking girl, Harry was not interested. Sadly, she never seemed to take his subtle hints. "Oh, okay," she said. Her smile got visibly smaller and her voice showed how disappointed she was. "Okay. Maybe another time," she said before walking off Harry's side before he closed the door. He looked at Padfoot, who looked quite amused. "Shut it," Harry said before he walked over to get the dog food. Chapter 2. Natasha Romanoff, Master Spy and Agent of the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, also known as SHIELD, walked into Wolves, a gym that doubled as a boxing training area. She was currently wearing black high heels and black trousers along with a gray shirt and an open light brown jacket. Her beautiful red hair flowed down just slightly past her shoulders. Her green eyes scanned every detail around her with ease as she walked. She pretended not to notice the many men who had seen her come in. She also pretended not to notice the staring or the way a few of them tried to show off by putting more effort into their exercising. Natasha walked towards the manager's office. She knocked on the door and once he heard a call her in, she opened it and walked into the room and found the manager sitting behind a desk. "Excuse me," Natasha smiled as she spoke in a polite voice. "I am not bothering you, am I?" No, I was just doing paperwork." The manager smiled as he gestured to the paperwork on his desk. "How can I help you?" "I come from out of town. I am visiting a friend. I am told he usually comes here," Natasha replied. "Oh, who would that be?" he asked. "David Price." Natasha answered. David Price was no real friend of hers. What he actually is would be an enhanced individual that SHIELD was looking into. David Price's father was a former member of SHIELD who worked in the science division. David Price's father, like many others before him, had attempted to recreate the super soldier serum that turned Steve Rogers into the super soldier that the world knew as Captain America. So when SHIELD found him dead and his son missing, they were going to be curious. The fact that the last two agents that went looking for him disappeared meant that they were going to put more effort into getting answers, which was why they sent her instead of a lower level agent. "Oh well, I don't think that you will be able to find him here," he said in an apologetic voice. "Why not?" "I heard he came here all the time," Natasha asked, raising an eyebrow. "He did until about a week ago," he replied. 8 days ago he came here and offered to fight anyone who was willing. He beat everyone, easily in fact," the manager said in a surprised voice. "He was kicking ass. He came back the next day and made the same offer. Nobody was really willing to take him up on his offer. Some had seen him fight yesterday and the others noticed the reluctance coming from them. Eventually he chose one person to fight. He lost and threw a fit. I ended up kicking him out." "Who fought him?" Natasha asked. "That would be him." The manager stood up and pointed through the office window to end of the gym where she saw a white-haired man punching a punching bag. "He is not much of a talker. I think he might be ex-military. Not sure. But he knows how to fight," the manager said in an odd voice. "What is his name?" Natasha asked. "Give us a sec," the manager said as he picked up a file and looked through it for a few seconds before he responded. "Harry Potter. Sorry. Can't really tell you more than that. I hope you understand that." "It's fine," Natasha said. Any knowledge that the man had she could get easily, so it was not really a big problem. "Thank you," she said before she walked out of the office and walked towards the white-haired man. As she stopped near him, she got a good look at him. He was wearing black trainers, black tracksuit bottoms and a black shirt. His hands and wrist were covered in tape. He appeared to have not noticed her as his attention was purely on the boxing bag he was striking. "Excuse me," she said. "Yeah?" he asked without stopping his assault on the bag. The manager said. "Your name was Harry Potter?" She said it in the form of a question. "Yeah, I was wondering if I could talk to you." "You are," he pointed out. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked as he finally stopped. He caught the bag as it swung back. He finally looked at Natasha, who mentally memorized his face just as he did the same to her. "I want to talk to you about a friend of mine, David Price," Natasha answered. "You have met him recently. Name doesn't ring a bell." Harry shrugged. "What does he look like?" "Skinny. Brown hair. Blue eyes. Around 5'8". Normally wears a silver earring," Natasha answered, remembering his face from the file she was given. "According to the manager, you and him had a fight about a week ago." "Oh, him. If he really is your friend, then I would advise taking him to get help," Harry said as he began removing the tape from his hands. "Why?" Natasha asked, acting like a concerned friend while mentally noting down everything Harry was saying. Your friend was showing signs of drug use, Harry replied, sweaty, unstable. His eyes kept moving. That type of stuff he wanted to fight. Wouldn't let me say no. We got in a ring, I won. He threw a fit and got kicked out. That is pretty much where my involvement ends. Good luck with your friend, Harry said before he picked up a water bottle and walked off. Come to die. Harry heard the words whispered into his ear but ignored it and kept walking. Natasha watched as he walked away. There was definitely something wrong. If what she knew was right, then it meant that Price was taking the serum that his father had invented, which meant that he was physically enhanced. If what this Harry Potter says is true, then there was likely some physical and possibly mental side effects of the serum. However, as far as she knew, Harry was not an enhanced, so she wondered how he could beat an enhanced. Was Harry Potter an enhanced? Did Price's serum wear off? Was it perhaps not as effective as it was supposed to be? Natasha did not know, but she did know that she was going to find out. Chapter 3 Observations. The next day, Natasha was stood on top of a building that gave her a good look at the one that Harry stayed in. She looked through a pair of binoculars and saw Harry sitting on a sofa, laptop on his table with his dog on the floor by his feet. The previous day, Natasha had called in and asked for information on Harry Potter to be sent to her. According to the info she was given, the man was about 20 years old and used to live in the United Kingdom. He had one job in his whole life, and that was at a pizza shop when he was 16. That was not so surprising, but his bank account was. The man was somehow able to afford an apartment despite not having a job, but also had a large amount of money that would allow him to live comfortably for a while, and that was after he moved into the US. Had also been making a lot of money by selling things online. Things that varied from little things like toys to more expensive things like furniture, yet there was no data that showed him buying those things in the first place. At first, Natasha thought he could have inherited it from someone else, but he was apparently an orphan who had been raised in an orphanage all of his life. He had no known family members. Even the names of his parents were a mystery. Reports from the orphanage basically stated that he was a quiet boy when he was growing up, but was consistently top of his classes. He did not make many friends and kept to himself for the most part. The workers there expressed concerns regarding his mental state, but thankfully he had not really ever committed a crime. Harry Potter was a mystery, one that Natasha wanted to solve. She could not waste too much time on it, however, as her priority for the moment was Price, but hopefully it would help her catch Price. Price lost to Potter. From the research available on the serum plus Harry's words about Price, which she confirmed with other members of the gym, meant that she thought it was possible he could be interested in Potter. Natasha was brought out of her thoughts by the sound of her ringtone. She pulled out her phone and answered it. What? I am working, Natasha said into the phone. Have you completed your investigation on Price? A voice asked from the phone. No, I am looking at a potential lead, Natasha answered. We found him. What? Price. He was found outside a police station. What do you mean, found? Natasha asked. I mean he was unconscious and covered in blood. His nose was broken and he is missing a bunch of teeth. Plus it has been reported that he has been stabbed. The director wants you to come in and report what you know. Fine. Natasha sighed. I will be there as soon as I can, she said before hanging up. She took one last glance at Potter's apartment before she turned and walked away. Harry sighed as he entered his bedroom. Padfoot was asleep in his dog bed in the living room. Harry extended his right hand out. A black wand materialized into his hand. Harry waved it and all the windows and doors closed. He pointed it at himself and cast a charm to clean his teeth, as he did not feel like cleaning them the old-fashioned way. He just wanted to go sleep. He pointed his wand at the bed. A pillow flew off the bed and landed on the floor just before Harry conjured a small blanket on the floor. As the wand disappeared, Harry placed the pillow on the top of the blanket. His clothes shifted and now he was wearing nothing but gray pajama bottoms. Harry gently sat himself down on the blanket and leaned back until his head was resting on the pillow. Ah. Ickle wickle, Potter wants to go sleep. A female voice cooed. Come on, Potter. Let me take care of you, the voice whispered before it was replaced by loud cackling that rang through his ears. Harry closed his eyes, ignoring the voice as he used his occlumency to help silence the voice. It was another hour before he heard the laughing again. It was the last sound he heard before he fell asleep. Chapter 4 A Night Out. Wake up, Harry, a soft female voice cooed in his ear. Wake up. Come on. That's it, darling, it's time to wake up, Harry. Harry, wake up. The voice screeched. Harry's eyes snapped open. He saw Padfoot lying down next to him, looking at him with concerned eyes. Did I wake you? Harry asked in an apologetic voice as he reached out with one hand and began petting Padfoot's head. I am sorry, boy. Harry added before he yawned and forced himself to sit up. Go watch TV, Harry said, knowing that the dog was intelligent enough to know how to work the TV. I am going to go to the bathroom, then I will make you breakfast. Padfoot barked before rubbing his nose against Harry's head and licking his face before he happily walked out of the room. Thinking about his breakfast, Harry stood up and tiredly walked to the bathroom as a white shirt suddenly covered the upper half of his body. He walked into the bathroom and after completing his usual morning ritual he went into the kitchen where Padfoot was sat on the floor in front of the soda TV remote under his paw as a cartoon played on the TV. Next to him were two dog bowls, one for eating food and the other for drinking water. Padfoot looked towards Harry and barked while gesturing to both bowls with his head. All right, Harry chuckled before his wand appeared in his hand. Harry waved his wand and dog food flew from a cupboard and poured itself into his food bowl just as Harry summoned the other bowl. He caught it and poured some water into from his wand before he walked over and put it down next to Padfoot, who had already begun eating. You're welcome. Harry smiled as he patted Padfoot on the head. He walked back to the kitchen so he could begin making his own breakfast. Harry made his breakfast before he took it with him and sat on his sofa while placing it down on his table. He looked at the TV and saw what Padfoot was watching. Batman again? Harry asked Padfoot, who barked and gave him a look that Harry translated into, shut up and watch. Fine. Harry rolled his eyes and watched alongside Padfoot as they both ate their breakfast and watched as Batman tried to escape Arkham Asylum. Harry had sat down in a bar. Honestly, he preferred to stay at home, but he tried to get out of his apartment at least once every couple of days. Not counting when he walked Padfoot, Harry was sat at the bar on a wooden stool. Wearing black trainers, blue jeans, a white shirt and a black leather jacket, he sat quietly nursing a drink while observing the people around him. Some young and some old. Hey, a voice said. Harry looked up to see a pretty black-haired, blue-eyed bartender standing on the other side, wearing a black tank top while the rest of her body was hidden under the bar. She placed both of her hands on the bar and smiled at him. Can I get you anything else? She offered. No, thank you, Harry said in a quiet voice with a small shake of his head. Harry noticed a badge on her top. The name, Rose, was written on the badge. Suit yourself, she shrugged. I don't think I have seen you here before. My first time here, Harry admitted after taking a sip. Well, I hope it's not your last. By the way, I know you probably get asked this a lot, but the hair, is it? It is naturally white, Harry interrupted with a tired voice that betrayed how many times he had to answer that particular question. The eyes too? She asked. Yes, Harry said with a small nod. Sorry for asking, I was just curious, she said in an apologetic voice. I'm Rose, by the way. I kind of worked that out, Harry said as he gestured to her name tag. Yeah, Rose snorted in amusement. I suppose it's a bit of a giveaway. What about you? What's your name? Harry answered but did not say any more than that. You're not much of a talker, she noted. Have you ever thought about changing your hair color? You know, dyeing it. Yes, Harry said. Why don't you then? Because I don't want to, Harry said as he finished his drink. The conversation continued for another minute or so, with Rose constantly trying to get more words out of Harry while he stuck to saying the minimal amount of words needed. All right, well, thanks for the drink. Harry pulled out some money and placed it on the bar. Keep the change as a tip or whatever, Harry said before he stood up. You sure you don't want anything else? She asked. I don't have any more money, Harry replied. Wait, she said quickly when Harry was about to turn and leave. Are you single? She asked. Not interested in a relationship, Harry said apologetically. You sure? She said with a small pout. Very, Harry nodded. Fine, no relationship. What about a night at your place? She asked. Harry was silent for several moments before he responded. If you make it one time only and at your place, then you have got a deal, Harry replied. What? Don't want to bring anyone to your place? She raised an eyebrow. My dog doesn't like it when I bring new people home, Harry shrugged. You have a dog? She asked. Yeah. Probably better come to my place then. I am allergic to dogs, she said in a disappointed voice. Harry wasn't sure if it was because she couldn't come to his place or because she could not have a dog. My shift finishes in 15 minutes, think you can wait that long? She asked. I suppose it'll be worth it, Harry said before he sat back down. Chapter 5 The Shield. I suppose it'll be worth it, Harry said before he sat back down. Oh, it will, she grinned. She was about to say more when a voice called for her. Coming. She called back before turning back to Harry. I'll be back in a bit. She turned and walked away. Harry discreetly looked around, and when he was sure that nobody was looking, he used his wand to refill his drink, but instead of alcohol he put butterbeer into it. His wand disappeared and Harry began drinking for the next few minutes. Harry. A voice called. Harry stopped drinking and turned to see a small group of girls standing right next to him. There was one girl with short brown hair, another that was a redhead with shoulder-length hair, and a blonde-haired girl that Harry recognized. What are you doing here? Alexis asked. What does it look like? Harry raised an eyebrow as he raised his drink. Alexis blushed just as Harry finished the last of his drink. I'm Ellen, the redhead said before gesturing to the brown-haired girl. This is Karen. It's nice to meet you, Harry. Oh, you were right, he is good looking. The brown-haired girl said to Alexis with a fake whisper, causing Alexis to blush even more. Oh, Harry, a voice said just as Rose appeared next to him, wearing black high heels, blue jeans and a leather jacket. I am ready to go if you are, she said. Harry nodded and stood up before offering an arm, which Rose took. I'll be off then, Harry said to the girls. See y'all later, he said before he walked out with Rose on his arm, ignoring the reaction from the girls. Do you have a car or something? Rose asked. If not, then I don't mind paying for a bus. I have a bike, Harry said as he and Rose stopped next to a stylish black motorbike. Of course, Harry did not really need a motorbike, seeing as he could pretty much just pop wherever he wanted whenever he wanted, but he did have a bike for a few reasons. The first being it gave him an actual answer if people asked how he got around. The second being that Harry was a bit of speed freak and found that he liked riding it, plus thanks to magic he could pretty much just drive as fast as he wanted without legal consequences, though admittedly he didn't do that often. The third reason behind it was experimentation. Harry had spent a lot of time experimenting with different charms and runes on his bike. For example, Harry did not worry about it getting robbed as he had placed plenty of magical defenses on it. Harry was brought out of his thoughts when he heard Rose give a hum of approval as she looked at his bike. Harry's placed his helmet on and mounted his bike with Rose sitting behind him and wrapping her arms around him before he took off. Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, found herself sat in a meeting to discuss David Price. There was about 10 other agents in the room as well. At the front of the room stood 3 of the most important members of S.H.I.E.L.D. One of them was Maria Hill, a black-haired beauty who was wearing the standard blue bodysuit uniform that S.H.I.E.L.D. agents wore while her hair was in a bun. She stood with her arms crossed, a serious expression on her face. She was the right-hand woman of the director and she was the deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D. On her right was Phil Coulson, one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s best and the director's right-hand man. Phil Coulson was a man who was stood in a simple black suit with brown combed hair. He, much like Maria Hill, had mastered the art of being able to command respect without the use of words. Phil, despite being generally more laid back than Hill, was still someone who had gotten to his position through hard work, and both were not easily intimidated by anyone. Standing about a meter in front of them was director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury. He had black skin, a bald head and a black eye patch over his left eye. He was dressed all in black while wearing a black trench coat. If Maria Hill and Phil Coulson were intimidating, then Nick Fury was absolutely terrifying. His very presence demanded respect and promised pain to those who could not deliver what he wanted. After a summary of basic information about David Price and his father, Natasha found herself called on to speak. She stood up from her seat and stood with her spine straight and her shoulders out. Not showing the slightest hint of nervousness, she started by explaining the research she did on David Price and all the information she was given. After some time, I was able to discover that he frequently visited a local gym named Wolves, Natasha said. I visited the gym to try and find some more information. I spoke with the manager of the gym and he informed me that David Price was kicked out a week before due to throwing a fit after losing in a fight to one of the people in the gym. I was looking at a potential lead into the story when I was called and told that Price was found injured at a police station. You mentioned a lead. What lead? Director Fury said. His one functional eye locked onto her. A man named Harry Potter, Natasha answered. He has white hair and gray eyes. About 6 foot tall. He goes to the same gym that David Price used to attend. From what I was told, I understand that Mr. Potter had beaten David Price in a fight, and I believe that was after Mr. Price had took the serum. The manager of the gym told me how Price had challenged people at the gym for fights 8 days before my visit. Then the next day he lost Mr. Potter despite beating everyone else the day before. I believed that Mr. Price may have possibly wanted to go after Mr. Potter, because he beat a person that I believed to be an enhanced, and the fact that he is a potential target made me look into his background. When I looked into Mr. Potter's background, I found a few things that don't add up. Like what? Chapter 6, a splashy situation. Like how he is an orphan with no relatives and only ever had one job in all of his life, which was working in a pizza shop when he was 16, yet was able to easily afford to move to the US and get a decent apartment while still having a fair amount left in his bank account, Natasha replied. Workers at the orphanage he used to live in expressed concerns about his mental state due to the fact that he was quiet and did his best to keep to himself. He has also been making money from selling various items from toys to furniture, but there is no history of him ever buying these things. He is currently living on his own with nobody. Unless you count his dog. I don't know how involved he is in the price case, but something doesn't add up, sir. She finished with a small frown. There is also something else that is odd about him, sir. What is that? Fury asked as he mentally went through everything Miss Romanoff had told him. He was found on the orphanage doorstep on his own when he was less than a year old, but that was not the weirdest thing. He was found with tattoos on his body. Harry currently found himself in a bathroom. Not his usual one though. This bathroom was in Rose's apartment. She had given him permission to use it after they had both rather enjoyable time enjoying each other. Harry had enjoyed a quick shower before he dried himself with a towel. As he dried himself, he caught sight of his body in a mirror. He didn't have the biggest body and would never be a bodybuilder, but he felt like it was a pretty attractive one. He had a lean body, barely any fat on him, which helped show off his muscles and abs. Harry looked at his arm. On the inside of his right forearm was a black tattoo of a wand. The tip of the wand started just at his wrist. The other end stopped just before his elbow. On his left arm was a different tattoo. On the middle of his left forearm was a plain black circle armband tattoo that wrapped around his forearm. Harry didn't bother turning around, but knew that if he looked at his back he would see a small triangle tattoo on the bottom of his neck and in between his shoulder blades. Harry put the rest of his clothes on before he exited the bathroom and found himself standing in Rose's bedroom. Rose was currently in her bed, fully nude but covered up to her chest by her bedsheet. You know, that was pretty good. She smiled at him, her hair messy and wild. It was then that she noticed his clothing. Are you leaving? She frowned. Maybe you can come over again in the future. I will think about it, Harry said, though he more than likely would not come back. He knew that repeated sex could result in feelings of attachment, and right now he did not want that. I'll show myself out, Harry said before he walked to the door. He stopped just as he opened the door when he heard her voice. You are not going to come back, are you? She asked knowingly. Probably not, Harry admitted honestly before he looked back at her. I am sorry, but I really don't want something more than what this was, Harry said apologetically. Can I ask why? She asked. It's personal, was all Harry was willing to say. Fair enough, she said in a disappointed voice. At least we will have my bed, she said, trying to make the situation a bit lighter. I am really sorry about this. It's fine, she said, waving him off. I'm not really that bothered. Plenty more fish in the sea, as they say. Thanks, Harry said as he gave her a short nod before walking out the door. Admittedly, Harry did feel a bit bad, but he had told her before they arrived that he did not want anything more than a one-time only bit of fun. Plus, she didn't seem all that bothered by it. A short while later, Harry had got on his bike and drove back to his apartment. Once Harry entered, he could not help but notice that Padfoot wasn't in the living room. Harry checked his own bedroom and saw that Padfoot was not there either. It was then that Harry heard a splash of water coming from the bathroom. You had better not be in that toilet, Harry called out before he entered the bathroom, only to see Padfoot paddling in a full bathtub. Really? Harry raised an eyebrow at Padfoot, who placed his front paws on the edge of the tub and began kicking with his back legs. Padfoot barked at Harry before grinning. Doggy paddle. Really? Harry groaned. Chapter 7, Harry's Boundaries. Harry found himself eating breakfast along with Padfoot. Though admittedly they ate different things, Harry was on his sofa and eating while Padfoot was lying down by his feet and eating from his bowl. The two were watching TV together, as they usually did. Once the two were done eating, Harry's wand appeared in his hand. He waved it, and Padfoot's bowl along with his own plate flew towards the kitchen and landed in the sink. I'll clean them after I have finished watching, Harry said to Padfoot when he saw the black dog look at him. Padfoot huffed before he continued to watch TV. Harry and Padfoot were enjoying themselves for quite some time when suddenly they heard a knock on the door. Padfoot looked at Harry. His face was asking if they were supposed to be expecting someone. Harry shook his head to say, no. Before he got up and walked towards the door, he looked through his door's peephole, and saw who was on the other side. He let out the smallest of sighs before he glanced towards Padfoot. Harry shook his head once more and opened it to reveal Alexis. Alexis, Harry nodded at her in the form of a greeting. How are you? He asked in a polite voice. Fine Harry, she said, shifting on her feet slightly. Just wanted to say sorry about my friends. They were just trying to embarrass and tease me and. It's fine, Harry waved her of. Really? He said. Oh good, Alexis said as she breathed out a sigh of relief. I am glad, and I am sorry that we bothered you on your date. She finished in a questioning tone. Wasn't really a date, Harry replied, but we saw you leave with that woman. Alexis frowned. I left with a woman, yes, but I do not have a relationship with that woman. Harry was about to continue when Alexis suddenly spoke again. Oh, you okay anyway? I forgot to ask. My mother is out of town for a couple of days and I have a problem with my sink. She said, Mum told me that last time she had a problem you helped her out, so I was wondering if you could do me a favor and just take a look at it, please. She asked. Fine, Harry sighed. He had a feeling that she did not want him to come just to check her sink but decided to play along for now. Do you have a toolkit in your apartment? Harry asked. Yumia, Alexis nodded, not sounding entirely sure. Yes I do. Great, I'll be up in about an hour or so. Harry replied. Thanks. She gave him a small smile before she turned and left. Harry waited until she was out of sight before he closed the door and turned back to see Padfoot looking at him. Padfoot barked at him twice. No, I am not chasing after her. Harry rolled his eyes. Padfoot barked again. I will take you to France and find you a nice French poodle if it makes you feel better. Harry said in response. Padfoot paused. His face managed to look thoughtful before he grinned and barked. The original Padfoot would love you. Harry smiled as he walked forward and began petting him as he sat down and watched TV. I'm here, Harry said as he arrived at the Alexis's apartment. He entered and saw Alexis standing nervously. Where's the damage? Harry asked. It's just over there, she said as she gestured to her kitchen sink. The toolbox is there as well. She added. Thanks. Harry nodded as he walked over. You go watch TV or whatever and I will fix it. Okay. She nodded and gulped before she walked off and left the room. Harry walked over to the sink. He was tempted to just use magic to fix it, but then that meant that he would have to explain it to Alexis or use magic to mess with her mind, and while he didn't mind using that on certain people, he tried to avoid it on others. A small while later, Harry had finished with his repair. It was a rather easy one. He cleaned and dried his hands. Alexis, Harry called. I'm done, he said. Just wait 1 minute. Her voice called a few seconds later. She entered the room. Except she looked noticeably different. She was not wearing much. A pink bra and panties plus a light purple see-through robe. Harry, she said, her voice a near whisper. Do really want to? No. Harry cut her off. What? Why? She blurted out as her face turned red due to embarrassment. She had known that rejection was a possibility, but she was not expecting one so quickly. Look, Alexis, Harry sighed as he ran a hand through his hair. You're a pretty girl. Really you are, but I think you want a relationship with me, and I am sorry, but that is not what I want. That girl you saw me with at the bar. A one-night stand. That's all she was to me. Now, while I am tempted to have sex with you, I doubt that you want to stop at just a single night. But I. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly as words seemed to have failed her. Look, I know you have a crush on me and I am flattered. Really, but I think it's best if we just keep our relationship as it is. I am sure that one day you will probably make someone really happy. But it's not me, Harry said apologetically before he walked out of the apartment and walked back towards his own. Harry wasn't sure if that was the best way to handle it. Usually all of his problems could be dealt with a simple wave of his wand, and while it was tempting, he did not really want to use mind magic on her. Chapter 8. A day at the mall. Excuse me, Harry said as he walked up to the counter in the game store. He was currently in the closest local mall. There were few things that Harry had no idea how to make. Video games were one of those. Harry had decided that he wanted another video game and figured he could buy his game and then go to a McDonald's or something to get something to eat. So Harry shifted his clothes into a pair of blue trainers and jeans, and a white hoodie before he drove over to the mall on his bike. Yes, the person behind the till asked, a thin man with brown hair. Do you by any chance have a PlayStation version of this game? Harry asked as he handed the man a game that he had picked off of a shelf. Yeah, give us a sec. the man said before he browsed the collection of games behind him. Here we go, he said as he placed it on the counter. Thanks, Harry said as he pulled out the right amount of money and handed it to him. You're welcome, the man said as he scanned the video game case and took the money before putting it in the till and producing a receipt for Harry. He put the game and receipt in a small bag before handing them to Harry. Anything else I can help you with? The man offered. No, thank you, Harry said as he gave the small nod. He was about to start walking away when the man talked again. Nice hair by the way, he said. My sister's been thinking of dyeing her hair as well. It's not dye, Harry said before he turned and walked off. Harry hoped he didn't seem rude, but in all honesty he did not want to talk with the man more than necessary, and he did not want to spend a lot of time talking about the guy's sister or hair either. Once Harry was out of the shop, his first stop was a bathroom. Once Harry entered the bathroom, he looked around for security cameras and other people. When he was confident that neither were in the bathroom with him, he summoned his wand and turned the bag carrying his game and receipt into a small portkey. He placed it down and watched as it activated, taking itself away so it could land in his apartment. A rather inventive way of not having to carry around his shopping, even though it made him feel a bit lazy. Harry did take a minute to relive himself before he washed and dried his hands. He leaned against the sink and thought about something. He could not help but notice he was being followed. Harry did not know by who or why, but he knew that he was being followed. He didn't last as long as he did without developing a sixth sense for danger. Harry was on guard ever since he left his apartment. Thankfully, whoever this person was, he or she had not tried anything yet. That didn't mean that Harry was not on guard. Right now Harry was tempted to just teleport back to his apartment or to his bike and drive off, but then that could cause problems if the person started wondering how he got back without leaving the bathroom. Harry was suddenly brought out of his thoughts by a loud sound coming from outside the bathroom. The sound was gunfire and it was followed by screaming. Before Harry could even think up a plan of action, the door opened and a man dressed all in black and wearing a ski mask entered the bathroom while holding a gun in his hand. Oi dickwad. Move, he said as he pointed the gun at Harry and gestured to the door. Harry simply raised an eyebrow at the man, who quickly grew impatient with Harry's lack of reaction. He fired a bullet at a wall before aiming his gun back at Harry. It's a real gun. Move it, he demanded. Fine, Harry said calmly as he raised his hands in the air. I am not going to do anything crazy. I am going to cooperate, Harry said as he slowly took a few steps forward. Hurry it up, dumbass, the man demanded. What did you call me? Harry stopped moving and blinked at the man. Are you deaf? I said move, asswipe. You've gotta stop insulting me, Harry said with a hint of warning. Or what, dumbfuck? The man snorted. I am. Harry quickly burst into action as his wand appeared in his hand and he fired off a disarming spell followed by a summoning spell before the man could react. Since Harry moved, it had taken 1 second for the gun to fly out the man's hand and 2 more seconds for it to fly into Harry's free hand. The man didn't even get a chance to protest as Harry had quickly hit him with 2 more spells. The first being a body bind that caused his legs to snap together as his arms snapped to his side while also causing him to lose the ability to move his body. The second spell was a silencing spell to stop him from making any noises. As the man fell to the floor, Harry cast a locking charm on the bathroom door. He walked over to the man and looked down on him. The man was looking at him with a look that Harry easily recognized as fear. Harry pressing the gun against the man's temple probably didn't help. Harry looked into the man's eyes and began reading his mind. Chapter 9. The hero within Fury was frowning. Not because he was angry or even upset, but because he was deep in thought. He was sat behind his desk in his office with his fingers steepled and pressed against his mouth. The only sign of movement from him was blinking and the occasional twitch in the right corner of his lips. The reason for Fury's deep thinking was one. Harry Potterell of the research into the man confirmed that Agent Romanoff was right when she said that things did not add up. An orphan boy found outside an orphanage with tattoos but no known relatives, yet is somehow able to become rich enough to move to America and live comfortably without any job at all. Then Barton, despite being S.H.I.E.L.D.'s best tracker, managed to lose Mr. Potter. According to Barton, it was probably because of the hostage situation, but Barton also admitted that he never saw Potter leave the bathroom that he had entered, which sounded weird to Fury because Barton was not some low-level agent that could easily be avoided. Though from Barton's reports, Fury learned that he had seen one person during the hostage situation and that he suspected the person to have more than likely been the one responsible for taking out the hostiles, and when they had learned that there was one unconscious hostage left in the bathroom that Mr. Potter was supposed to be in but no sign of Mr. Potter, then naturally their curiosity had increased. After some digging they discovered a hideout that the hostiles were using. A large amount of SHIELD agents came to the hideout, Barton included, only to find 20 or so men unconscious, some with broken bones, others with no signs of injury at all. Some time was spent looking through their phones, computers, files and any other information they might have had. At the end of it, SHIELD had realized that David Price had taken the serum that his father had given him and shared the rest of it with those men. When they decided he was no longer useful, they tried to get rid of him. The men still needed to be interrogated, but that was the best theory they had at the moment, which made things more worrying. If these men were enhanced, then that meant that they were all taken out by a skilled and powerful group, or perhaps a single skilled and powerful person. If Barton's report about the figure in the shadows was to be believed, and it was simply because it was Barton who had said it, the fact that this person could possibly be Harry Potter had not escaped Fury's mind. If it was Potter, then he either was ridiculously trained or an enhanced as well, or maybe even both. It was possible that Potter could be from another planet. Many people would scoff at the idea of aliens, but Nick Fury was not one of them. He did not rule anything out. It would make sense if Potter was an alien. Fury had originally brushed the knowledge of Potter's white hair off as a simple genetic problem, but it was possibly normal if he was an alien. And if Potter had extra capabilities beyond the average human, then maybe he was born with those abilities. Admittedly, Fury did not believe, nor did he think, that Harry Potter was an alien. However, he was not going to rule it out immediately. Another thought that Fury had was what to do if Potter really was the one responsible for defeating all these enhanced. If he was, then Fury did not know if he would thank him or be worried about him. Probably both. One important question was how Potter did it, as it advanced tech or enhanced abilities. If Potter was responsible for single-handedly defeating all of those enhanced, then Fury wanted him on his side, or at the very least to know all of his abilities so he could come up with plans to deal with Potter should he ever decide that killing and murdering whoever he wanted was fun. "Shut it," Harry said to Padfoot the next day as he flopped down onto his sofa. Padfoot barked before he climbed up and placed his head in Harry's lap and allowed Harry to pet him. "I don't know why, but I feel like all that I just did is going to result in a big headache." Harry sighed as he ran his other hand through his hair. Padfoot gave him a soft bark. "I know," Harry said in agreement. "Personally, I blame Nargles," Harry added. Padfoot have a small huff in response. "No, I am pretty sure it was Nargles," Harry replied. Harry was currently thinking about his actions at the mall. He didn't really mean to get involved, but the assholes had ruined his day and he had gone into fight or flight mode the second the gun was aimed on him. And Harry nearly always chose fight. Of course, Harry also knew when to run. Probably not as well as he should have when he was younger, but that is besides the point. Taking out the first bad guy lead to taking out the others, which lead to Harry going to their hideout and finishing the job. Harry had returned home and fell asleep after he was sure that the job was finished. That was one thing Harry made sure to do. Always finish the job. Quite frankly, it had been very tempting to just end their lives and leave it at that, but Harry figured that since he was no longer in a war, he should probably not kill each and every bad guy he meets. Though it was still tempting, he realized that it was possible for him to get another chance at it if they escaped, but hopefully they wouldn't. Harry was glad he remembered to remove their knowledge of him out of their minds. It could make things really awkward and difficult for him if he didn't. Harry also realized that if he wanted to, then he could probably just go out and spend his nights fighting crime like a hero out of a comic book. But Harry didn't really know if he wanted to do that. On the one hand, it would be fun to fight criminals and it would feel nice to keep people safe, but on the other hand, it can be argued that Harry had already done more than his fair share of that. Harry wasn't one to brag, mostly because he didn't talk to many people, but also because he didn't really think much on or of his achievements. But even if Harry was the humblest person in the world, he would still admit that he had saved quite a lot of lives. Chapter 10 Shadow. So sometimes I love my job, Clint thought sarcastically. Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, was one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s best agents. He was an expert at hand-to-hand and weapons combat, but his specialty was things that could be done from a long-distance: spying, tracking, shooting. He could do it all. That was probably why Fury had sent him to trail after this Harry Potter. Clint, while wearing casual clothes, had kept his distance and managed to follow him into a mall. Clint had entered the mall after him. He made sure not to get close. He could see just as good from a distance. Clint decided to stay on the first floor when this Harry Potter went onto the second floor of the mall. Clint was tempted to go up to the second floor as well, but it would be easier to be spotted if he was directly in the target's eyeline. Clint made sure to position himself so he stood in places where he could look up and see Potter. If Potter ever looked down, then Clint would simply act like a regular shopper going about his business, and if Potter went out of view, then Clint would just use the thermal feature in his sunglasses to help keep track of him. When he saw Potter leave the video game store, he saw Potter enter a bathroom. Clint waited patiently, not really wanting to use thermal imaging to see a guy in a bathroom. Everything seemed to be going to plan. At least until it all went balls up. About a minute later, apparently some assholes decided that today was a perfect day to burst into a mall and rob the place. Most of the people had started running, but a select few had been forced to stay as hostages. Clint was one of those hostages, but as he saw it, he allowed himself to be one of those hostages because, at the risk of sounding vain, the hostages had a better chance of surviving with him there. Clint looked around and saw many hostiles, at least 10 around him. Plus he counted at least 7 on the upper floors. They were all carrying various different guns. Clint was trying to work out a plan to take out the hostages, but his priority was on getting as many civilians out of here as possible, preferably alive. As Clint was thinking up a plan, the light went out and the mall became much darker. Not dark enough to not be able to see anything, but dark enough to make a clear difference. What the hell? One of the hostiles blurted out. It's probably a power failure. Another commented. Any further response was cut off by a flash of light from the upper floor, followed by 2 more flashes of light, each flash at a different place from the previous one. The sound of gunshots was heard shortly after, along with a scream. What the hell is that? One of the hostiles demanded. How am I supposed to know? Another snapped. Any further response was cut off by the sound of screaming as one of the hostiles from the upper floor fell in front of the hostiles. One of the hostiles became startled by the sudden drop and had accidentally shot the hostile with his own gun. That hostile did not get long to think about the consequences of his actions as a beam of light headed towards him and he dropped onto the floor. Clint presumed the man was unconscious but did not know for sure. Clint had seen that the beam had shot from above, but the hostiles appeared to have not noticed yet. It was clear to Clint that they were not really trained. Another flash of light and one more hostile removed before the rest of them were able to realize that they had to start aiming upwards. They all started firing upwards. Did we get him? One hostile asked as he reloaded, only to be struck by a blue beam and knocked unconscious. This caused the others to put extra effort into their firing and they started shooting upwards again. Clint thought that with the amount they were shooting, it was highly possible for them to hit something with pure dumb luck, though apparently not, as another hostile went down to another beam. Right after that, the hostiles began firing upwards again, and for the first time Clint saw anything in the darkness besides bright light. He saw a figure standing in the darkness. The flashes from the gunfire allowed Clint to see him. Clint guessed that the person was male, judging by his body shape. All Clint could see was that the guy was wearing a black hoodie. The hood was up and his face was covered entirely in darkness that didn't go away even when the light flashed against him. Clint only managed to lock onto him for about a second before he disappeared. He was gone so fast that Clint wasn't even sure if had seen right. Get a hostage. One shouted before a small red beam blasted the gun out of his hand just as another hit him in his right leg and he fell to the floor, screaming in pain as he grabbed his knee. Stop. The last remaining hostile shouted as he grabbed a random woman from the pile of hostages and pulled her to her feet before he wrapped one arm around her neck and pulled her in close, using her as a human shield while his other hand was aiming a gun at the side of her head. Do anything else and I will shoot. He yelled at the darkness. Clint was close enough that he could easily sneak up and disarm the guy without anyone but the hostile getting injured. However, he did not immediately do so as he did not want to be in the line of fire and did not want to be hit by whatever those beams were. Clint found it weird that even he, with his vision, which was easily better than most people's, could not find the source of the beams. Sure, when he looked up he could see a beam, but the beams looked like they were just coming out from the shadows. Clint was guessing that they came from the guy he saw earlier, but he still couldn't see him. Let me go. The hostile said as he began backing up with the woman while constantly looking all around in the hopes of finding whoever was attacking him and his friends. However, he had only taken a few steps back when he suddenly felt the gun get pulled out of his hands and upwards before disappearing from sight. The hostile did not get much time to think about what happened as a sudden burst of pain appeared in his back leg, painful enough for him to cry out and let go of the hostage. He looked down and saw blood coming from a cut on his leg. He cried out once more when another cut appeared on his face just before a beam hit him and he flew backwards before crashing into a pillar. He slid down the pillar and landed on the floor, unmoving. The lights came back on and Clint saw all the hostiles unconscious while the second floor of the mall was shot up by hundreds of bullets. At that moment Clint had one thought in his head. He was going to have to explain Chapter 11 Undercover games. One other thing that Harry remembered was the thanks he got for saving lives. At first it was great. It always was. It was nice to have people be appreciative, make him feel like all the blood, sweat and tears were worth it, though of course it would not last because sooner or later something else would happen, and if he did not go and fix it then his past work was completely forgotten. It didn't help that even the people he saved were ungrateful. Sure, they would say thank you when he did good and sorry after they wronged him but needed him back. After a while it all became meaningless to Harry. He had given his blood, his sweat, his skin, his tears, years of his life, and it wasn't enough for them. He had played the hero. But after the way they treated him he was amazed that he had not become the villain, though he realized that he probably was. Depending on who you asked, Harry was pulled out of his thoughts by the sound of knocking on his door. He groaned as he hoped it was not Alexis. He could do without the drama right now. Harry stood up and Padfoot let out a small whine due to losing his pillow. Just give me a sec, Harry whispered to Padfoot before he walked over to the door. Harry stopped just in front of the door and waved his wand, making it so that the door was transparent. It was a rather useful spell that meant that he could see the other side without anyone on the other side being able to see him. It was at this point that Harry realized it was probably a good thing that he was not a pervert. Harry saw who was standing on the other side of the door. His eyes widened slightly in realization it was the same redhead who asked him earlier about that. David Price. Asshole. She was currently wearing black shoes, blue jeans, and a red sleeveless shirt. Harry knew it was possible that she could have something to do with the assholes he had just dealt with, even though he saw no mention of her in any of their memories. Harry removed the spell and got rid of his wand before he slowly opened the door. He was ready to summon his wand into his hand if needs be. Oh hi, it's you, she said in a cheery and surprised voice as she looked at him. She looked at him and saw that he was wearing slippers on his feet, gray tracksuit bottoms and a gray shirt. Her sea green eyes met his gray ones. You live here? She asked in amazement. I do, Harry nodded. What are you doing here? Harry asked, though he kept his tone to one belonging to somebody who was simply curious. Oh, I got a job near here and I am staying in there, she said as she gestured to the apartment opposite Harry's. For the time being anyway, she added. I was just hoping to talk to everyone and just find out if there was anything I should know or any problems with the building, she said. Not that I am aware of. Harry shook his head. How's your friend? Harry asked. From what I have been told he is in hospital, she replied in a sad voice. But hopefully he will get better. I haven't really had a chance to talk with him yet anyway. Thanks I guess, and just do me a favor and tell me if I make too much noise or disturb you. Okay, thanks I guess. Harry nodded before he closed the door. Fuck, Harry said, not worrying about being overheard as he had a silencing ward around the apartment. It was harder to make the ward able to let him hear sounds from the outside than it was to make it stop all sound from leaving the apartment. When she was talking, Harry had half-heartedly listened. His real focus was on reading her mind, not something he tried to make a habit of, but he did when he felt like he had a good enough reason to do so. Needless to say, he had felt like he had a good enough reason to do so. Reading the woman's mind allowed Harry to learn her name was Natasha Romanoff and that she was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., an organization that he had apparently caught the attention of. Harry did not spend much time looking into information on Natasha as he knew he was on limited time and had placed his focus on learning about S.H.I.E.L.D. Apparently though he was an enhanced, which he supposed he was. Natasha had been sent to spy on him as she was one of their better agents and did not think that it would be a good idea to send one of the lesser agents in to deal with an enhanced, and they were right. Part of Harry wanted him to take everything he could and run away and hide before coming up with a new identity and living the rest of his life on the run. Another part of him realized that running instantly would let them know that he was onto them and simply cause them to increase their efforts. The question now was what to do. For now at least he was going to act normal until he had come up with a new plan. He would not make any changes to his daily routine either, as that could throw them off and make them put more effort into following him, which meant that later he would have to go for a drive like he usually did. If this agent was half as good as she was supposed to be, then she would be ready to go at a moment's notice or already know his routine, which likely meant that she would either attempt to enter his apartment after he left, do nothing, or come with him. Harry thought that first was unlikely as she had only just arrived and would probably wait a bit before doing that. The second was also unlikely. which meant that she was more than likely to come with him. Chapter 12. A ride with Natalie. Harry exited his apartment while wearing black trainers, blue jeans, a gray shirt and a black jacket. He had a helmet in his hand and was about to close his door when the door opposite opened to reveal Natasha, who was wearing black knee-high boots, blue jeans, a red shirt under a brown jacket and had her hair in a ponytail. "Oh hi." She smiled at him. "Hi. Going somewhere?" he asked while masterfully keeping his face blank. "Yeah, I'm just going to go to look around the local shops, though I don't really know where they are," she said awkwardly as she pulled her phone out. "Good thing I can just use this to find out," she added as she gestured to her phone. "What about you?" she asked. "I'm just going out for a drive," Harry replied. "If I don't force myself to go out, then I would probably stay in my apartment for the rest of my life," he added with a small shrug. "Well, if you don't have a specific destination, then maybe you can drop me off," she suggested. "I'll pay for fuel or whatever if you need it, and I only plan to pick up a few things, I mean if it's no bother," she said with a hopeful look. Harry paused. He would usually make some excuse, but he stopped himself. Letting her think things would go her way would probably beneficial to him, and if he learned more about her at the same time, then even better. "Fine. I'll just go in and get another helmet," Harry said before he went back into his apartment. He summoned his wand into his hand and conjured another helmet. Before his wand disappeared, Harry took the helmet and walked back and tossed it to Natasha, who caught it easily. Harry closed and locked the door. He was not really that worried about someone entering the apartment after he left. His magical defenses would stop that once he locked it. He nodded to Natasha and began walking with her, following after him. "Thanks," Natasha said. "By the way, I don't think I have actually given you my name." "You haven't?" Harry nodded. "Well, I am Natalie," she replied. "Natalie Rushman," she said. Harry hummed as he tried to think up a response before he eventually just decided to not say anything. The two walked in silence until they were out the building, with Harry remembering that part of the reason he didn't talk to other people was because he had no idea how to. "Nice bike," she said when they arrived at Harry's bike. "How much did it cost?" she asked as she put her helmet on. "A few hundred. It was second hand," Harry answered. When Harry had actually gotten the bike, it was heavily damaged and the original owner didn't want to pay for it to be repaired. Not a problem for a wizard who could repair it with a wave of a wand, so Harry brought it once it was ready to go. Natasha sat behind him. She wrapped her arms around his middle as she sat closer than necessary with her front pressed against his back. "I am ready to go if you are," she whispered in a slightly husky voice. Harry didn't respond but instead just drove off. As he drove, he could not help but notice the small shivers that went through her body every couple of minutes. He probably only noticed thanks to how close they were. He also could not help but notice how her hands would stay perfectly still but occasionally slide slightly higher or lower. Harry was well aware of what she was doing. It wasn't the first time a beautiful girl had used her body and seduction to get him to lower his guard. He was tempted to call her out on it but decided to let her continue to play her games. He would stay vigilant. As he drove, Harry felt a tingle from one of his wards at his apartment. It was an alert ward which told him that someone was trying to get in his apartment. At this point, Harry's first few magical activated. Nothing too extreme, but it would keep anyone from getting into his apartment. Harry wanted to go back and deal with it, but he knew that he did not need to do anything unless another ward activated, and it would take a strong magic user or destroying the entire wall to get past the first ward. Eventually, Harry arrived at the local shops. He had parked his bike and allowed Natasha to get off. "Thanks," she smiled after she took her helmet off. She took out her phone and checked the time. "Hey, it's 12:80. You want to come with me to go get some chips or something?" "My treat," she offered. Chapter 13. A spy's game. Since Harry was already playing along, he decided to accept and followed her into a local chip shop where the two sat and began eating. Both had ordered a burger meal. That is not bad," Natasha commented between bites. "You come here often?" she asked. "I've only come to this specific shop about 3 or 4 times," Harry answered. "I usually just order food from home," he added. "Lazy," Natasha said with mock disapproval. "By the way, you're British, right?" she asked. "Let me guess, the accent." "The accent?" she nodded. "Well, yeah, I am British," Harry replied. "And before you ask, the hair is natural." "Wasn't going to ask, but thanks for letting me know." "Common question, I am guessing." "More than I'd like," Harry admitted. "What about you?" Harry asked. "Born in America. Russia actually," she replied. "But raised in America. You speak Russian?" Harry asked. A little, she said in Russian before going back to English. What about you? Speak any other languages besides English? No, not really. Harry fibbed. The two continued talking as they ate. While they were eating, Harry looked through her mind and learned as much as he could about S.H.I.E.L.D. plus her current plan, which was to distract him while a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent tried to get into his apartment and look around. It was a good plan, he supposed, as he couldn't have blamed her if she was with him. Harry also learned a little bit about her. He didn't try to learn as much as he possibly could since he had limited time and decided to instead focus on her knowledge about S.H.I.E.L.D. plus she not really a bad guy. All he learned about Natasha herself was her abilities and glimpses of what sort of training she went through. After looking at the training she had gone through and the age she started at, Harry could not help but gain some respect for her. I am going to go back to my bike, Harry replied. I'll pick you up here in about an hour. Is that all right with you? Harry asked as his wand appeared in his hand while he was under the table. He cast a listening charm on her before quickly getting rid of his wand. It's fine, Natasha agreed. I only came today to look around anyway. See you in an hour then, Harry said before he got on his bike and drove off. Harry made sure he was a short distance away before he stopped. He entered the closest shop, which happened to be a game shop. He went into a corner and summoned his wand again. He quickly performed a spell to make his wand look like a phone to anyone else who happened to look at him. Harry placed the tip of the wand against his ear and listened into his listening charm. What do you mean? He heard Natasha quietly hiss. He was guessing that she was speaking into her phone. How can you not get in? It's a simple door. No, he is out of my sight. He told me that he was going to drive around for an hour before coming back to pick me up. Abort the mission. He might return and we don't need him finding you there. If you can't get in, then there's no point. Go back and make a report about what happened. I'll speak to you about it later, she said before Harry heard a sound which he believed was her ending the call. Goddamn, she said softly under her breath, but Harry heard it. Harry listened for a few more minutes, but when she was no longer speaking, he decided to stop listening. Later, after picking up Natasha and dropping her off back at home, Harry had entered his apartment to find Padfoot watching TV. Padfoot noticed him enter and barked at him. Yes, I know. Harry rolled his eyes as he closed his door. I felt the ward. Woof. Padfoot barked again before tilting his head to the side. No, but to answer your question, I think it's time I take a closer look at S.H.I.E.L.D. Harry flew in his animagus from towards the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, a giant ship that floated high up in the air but was unable to be seen thanks to invisibility tech. At least that's what it was, if his mind-reading abilities were still good, and Harry thought they were. He had read Natasha's mind this morning when he had met her as he had gone out for his morning walk with Padfoot. According to her memories, she would be going to a S.H.I.E.L.D. meeting later. Harry placed a tracking charm on her, then waited until it was time for her to leave before he followed after her in his animagus form. Harry's animagus form was none other than the peregrine falcon. The only real difference between Harry's form and a regular falcon was the fact that he had green eyes and was faster than a regular falcon. Admittedly, Padfoot was a bit disappointed that Harry was not a fellow canine. As Harry flew closer, he turned invisible. When Harry had combined the Deathly Hallows and become the Master of Death, he had gained some new abilities when they fused to his body. The wand gave him a power boost, as one with knowledge about the wand would expect it to, but it also gave him knowledge from its previous owners. To many, the Hallows were simply just tools, but they were much more than that. It could tell what knowledge that he would have found valuable and taught him it. It didn't teach him anything about the previous owners, just their spells, which was why Harry knew how to teleport instead of apparate. One wizard had invented the technique during the 18th century but was killed before being able to teach it, which was a shame as it was better than apparition in pretty much every way, from comfort to distance. Whenever Harry summoned it, the tattoo on his right arm would disappear. When the wand disappeared, it returned to his arm and took a tattoo form. Chapter 14. The Hunt for Harry Potter. The Resurrection Stone had also given him abilities. The most valuable of those abilities was the ability to heal from anything. It didn't matter if it was a simple paper cut or bullets from a gun. It would heal. It had also given him the ability to temporarily summon the dead. Despite what his title advertised, he was not in complete control of death. Harry was limited to talking to the dead, but it was not something he liked to do a lot. Partly because it was a difficult thing to maintain for more than a few minutes, but also because he was of the opinion that the dead should be allowed to rest. They were dead after all. If they couldn't rest, then who could? The stone made the tattoo on his left arm, and while it did nothing while it healed him, it did glow when he talked to the dead. Harry's final hallow and final tattoo was the invisibility cloak that he had inherited from his father. The cloak did as advertised, but also so much more. It created clothes for him with just a single thought. The invisibility feature was also much better than when it was a simple cloak. While it did not allow him to walk through walls, it did allow him to walk through wards like they were nothing. A good ability, though admittedly not as useful since he was no longer on his world and he had no interest in breaking into the very few wards he had seen during his time on this world. If Harry becomes invisible, he can't be seen, heard, smelt or detected through any means besides touch. In fact, it even worked when he was in his animagus form, which was just a great bonus. Once Harry had landed on the helicarrier, he transformed back into his human form just as Natasha came out of a jet but made sure to stay invisible. Harry applied a listening charm to her which he would check every minute or so, but for now he was going to explore until he heard something from the charm. Harry walked inside, taking special care to not touch anyone. He was looking at various rooms until he arrived in one room that appeared to be a target practice room. Harry walked in and found one instructor speaking to several agents who were practicing by shooting at targets. Harry walked in front of the instructor and looked into his eyes. After a quick read of his mind, he learned where the weapons storage room was. Harry teleported there immediately. He browsed through the weapons. They were all admittedly impressive. Harry knew quality when he saw it, and these were definitely good quality weapons. Harry checked his listening charm and heard Natasha mention that a meeting was about to start. Harry made a mental note to come back here later, but for now decided to just take 2 handguns and a machine gun along with some ammo. He made them into portkeys and sent them back to his apartment. Once Harry was out of that room, he quickly made his way towards the meeting room. Once Harry arrived in the meeting room, he stood in the corner and looked around. There was a bunch of agents in here. Harry didn't know all of them, but he knew a few thanks to his trips into Natasha's mind. He recognized the brown-haired person sat next to her as Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, the guy who was following him the day of the mall attack. Harry recognized a few of the other agents, but his focus was on the 3 at the front: Agents Hill, Coulson and Director Fury, the big 3 of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now that everyone is here, an irritated Fury spoke. The second his mouth moved, everyone went silent and sat straight before giving Fury their full station. We are all here to discuss one person. This person. Fury gestured to the screen behind him. Coulson clicked a button on the remote in his hand and the screen changed to show a picture of Harry. This is one Harry Potter. Does anyone know anything about him? His hair is ridiculous. The agent sitting behind Natasha commented. If you want to be a smart ass, then I'd recommend putting more effort into the smart part. Fury replied. Mr. Potter right now is a major pain in my ass. We barely have any information on him. He is 20 years old. He has had one job at the age of 16 in a pizza shop but only stayed there for a month. He has not had a job before or since, yet is somehow able to easily afford to move to the US and live comfortably knowing that he still has plenty left in his bank account. We also suspect that he is an enhanced. Fury added. Barton. Fury called. Report. Sir. Barton stood up from his seat and stood straight. I followed Potter like I was tasked to. He entered a mall and went into a game shop. Afterwards he went into the bathroom. A short while later a group of men with guns entered the mall and took many people hostage. Suddenly the lights went out and each of them was taken out one by one. I saw one person's gun fly out of his hands. The others were either picked off in the darkness or hit by a beam of light, unless you count the one guy who was accidentally shot by one of his own, but even he was thrown off the 2nd floor of the mall. During the chaos I saw one person standing on the 2nd floor. I didn't see his face. Barton looked pained at admitting that. However, I believe that this person was responsible for taking out the other men. Barton said. Men who happened to have taken a failed attempt at the super soldier serum. Fury added. Yes, sir. Barton nodded. Shortly after, the bathroom where Mr. Potter went in was checked and one of the men was found there unconscious. Excuse me, sir. One S.H.I.E.L.D. agent interrupted. I'm sorry, but did you say beam of light? That is what I saw. Barton said as he gave the agent a look that suggested it'd be better for him to stop doubting him. Describe the beams. Hill ordered. Chapter 15. Double agent. Well, ma'am, they were different colors but red and blue for the most part. Barton answered. They also had different effects. Sometimes they would throw someone back and other times they would cause the person to lose consciousness and fall down. What weapon can do that? Fury asked. Though the way he said it made it clear that he was not expecting them to respond. We don't even know if it was a weapon that he used or if it was a special ability. As of right now, we suspect Mr. Potter to be the one responsible for stopping them. Miss Romanoff has recently moved in the same building as Mr. Potter. Your report, Miss Romanoff. Sir. Natasha said as she stood up. I have not yet learnt as much as I would like about Mr. Potter. At least nothing important. He is very tight-lipped. Not very talkative either. From talking to the other people living in the building, I have learnt that he generally keeps to himself. He has occasionally done repairs for a few of them and has a dog, but that's all I could really get from them outside of rumors and guessing. I am still working on gaining his trust. I had recently gone on a bike ride with him and distracted him while I had another agent try to get into his apartment while we were gone. Sir. One female agent stood up. I had tried multiple times to get into his apartment, but I couldn't, no matter how many times I tried to pick the lock or used any other method of opening outside of breaking the door down. Maybe you just didn't do it properly. The man sitting behind Agent Romanoff jeered once he was finally able to stop looking at her backside. I did do it properly. The female agent glared at him. I believe her. Agent Romanoff said. I had chosen her to help because of her marks in the stealth exam. She added, earning a grateful look from the female agent. Sir, I believe he may have had some form of training. What makes you think that? Fury asked, raising an eyebrow. The way he stands, walks, the fact that his eyes are constantly glancing around every so often. He has the look of someone who has seen a lot. Fury frowned. We will double check our records about him and double check our knowledge on likely training areas where he could had training along with the most likely people available to train him. As they continued talking, Harry slid to the front and stood in front of Fury. He looked the man in his one eye and read his mind. Harry was concentrating only on all of Fury's knowledge related to himself. Everything else was not important to him. Once Harry was done, he smirked and walked into the corner and listened to the rest of the meeting. When it neared the end, he walked off. Not before aiming a hex designed to act like a slap at Natasha's backside. She jumped in surprise but managed to play it off as standing on her tiptoes briefly. She glanced back at the agent behind her before looking straight as she mentally came up with several plans for revenge and started organizing them by how fitting they were. When Harry got back, he looked at the weapons he had stolen borrowing from S.H.I.E.L.D. The weapons were impressive, lightweight, and after a few practice shooting at some conjured targets, he realized that they were easy to use, or at least better than the guns that Harry had used before. While Harry had some experience with machine guns, he was more comfortable with the handguns, though he supposed that later on he could go back and check out more of their weapons. Harry placed the guns and ammo down before pulling out his wand. He decided on what he wanted to do before he began waving his wand. The next day, Harry was standing outside of his apartment. He was looking at his phone, but mentally timing how long it would take for Miss Romanoff to come here. Harry had decided that if she was going to spy on him, then he might as well have his fun with her. Hey! A voice called as Harry got to 2 minutes. Harry turned around to look at Natasha, who was walking up to him. How are you doing? She asked. She was wearing blue high heels, a white summer dress that reached just above her knees. Her hair was flowing down just past her shoulders. She also had a handbag on her left arm. I'm fine, Harry said as he looked at her. I'm just planning to go to the shops. Me too. I could do with some more food, she said. Mind if I join you? She asked with a small smile. If you want. Harry nodded. Aren't you going on your bike? She asked, noticing that he was not carrying a helmet. I decided to mix it up and call a taxi, Harry replied just as a taxi arrived. Ah, here it is, Harry said as he stepped towards the back and opened the door. He gestured Natasha to enter in first. Natasha gave him a small smile before entering. She sat in the middle, which forced Harry to sit at her side. Harry climbed in and told the taxi driver where he wanted to go. So, Natasha said as she turned to Harry once the taxi drive off. You buying food too? She asked. Nah. Harry shook his head slightly. Home security stuff. Home security. She echoed. Yeah, my dog has been spooked lately, Harry said, looking straight ahead and nod at her. I think someone might have tried to break in, so I'm upping security. Natasha hummed lightly for a second. Are you worried about your bike? She asked. Little bit, Harry admitted. Speaking of the bike, I feel like I should apologize. About what? She asked, looking confused. About how you didn't like the bike ride we went on, Harry replied. What makes you think I didn't like it? She frowned. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, you were holding me so tight, Harry said with a straight face. And there was the way your body kept shaking. I mean, you were clearly upset by it. No. It's fine. Harry cut her off as he placed his hand on her leg, just above her knee. I don't mind. Some people don't like bikes. Harry shrugged before falling to silence. Natasha waited for him to move his hand away, but he didn't. A minute passed and he hadn't moved his hand at all. She looked at him, but he was still looking ahead, so did not notice, or at least pretended not to notice. Ahem. She coughed. Hum. Harry turned to her with a questioning look on his face. Your hand, she said as she gestured to the hand on her leg. Oh, sorry, he said, not bothering to look surprised or embarrassed at all. He removed it without any fuss and continued looking forward with a blank expression on his face. Natasha looked at him for a second before she also looked forward. Harry didn't say or do anything else, but the desire to smile was strong. Chapter 16 Past Bonds. I don't know, boy, Harry said as he petted Padfoot's head. Padfoot barked and gave Harry a questioning look. How am I supposed to do that? Padfoot barked again. Like I said, I don't know, I am not sure yet, Harry said as he thought about what he would do with S.H.I.E.L.D. Harry knew he could probably outrun S.H.I.E.L.D. all of his life, but was that really something he wanted to do? Live his life on the run. He had done that before. It was not something that he looked forward to repeating. Sooner or later S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to catch up to him. Unless of course he spent the rest of his life under a Fidelius charm, but that would mean being ridiculously careful whenever he went out, plus it would limit himself on what he could do, and Harry was admittedly enjoying his life. Not just the ability to sleep wherever and whenever he wanted in a safe place, but also just constantly having food, and also the normal everyday things like TV. When he attended Hogwarts, he and the other students were told some bullshit about electrical appliances not working near magic. When Harry tested it later, he was more than a bit pissed off about the fact that he missed out on years of TV because purebloods didn't want to bring in more muggle things than necessary. Admittedly, they didn't work in Hogwarts, but literally everywhere else they did. Harry also didn't have to worry about money. It was simple for him to just create things that he could sell. An added bonus from the Hallows was that anything Harry created with magic could be permanent if he wanted it to be. Before, if he conjured something, it would eventually disappear, but now it would only disappear if he didn't want to make it last. It was easy enough to create some gold and discreetly sell it along with other things. In fact, Harry had made a great many things in his apartment himself. Obviously not the TV or laptop or anything like that, but things like the sofa was all him. S.H.I.E.L.D. was not like Voldemort and his army of Death Eaters. He couldn't just kill them all. Most of them were just regular people wanting to do their job or do good in the world. Fury, despite likely having many goals outside of protecting people, reminded Harry a lot of Mad-Eye Moody. Harry wasn't totally sure what the man's priorities were, but decided to find out the next time he came across him. Harry's only other thoughts about S.H.I.E.L.D. were what he got from Natasha. She viewed S.H.I.E.L.D. as a way to make up for a great many bad deeds she had done in her lifetime. You can never be forgiven, a voice whispered into his ear. You're not a hero, Potter. They won't see you as the boy who lived in the history books. You won't be seen as a hero when your story is told. Do you know what they will call you? Harry Potter the army killer. Harry Potter the evil mass murderer. Harry Potter the. Harry shook his head, cutting off the voice. With practiced ease he ignored it. Woof. Padfoot barked as he rubbed his head against Harry's before he placed it back on Harry's lap. Yeah. You too. Harry smiled softly as he stroked Padfoot behind the ear. Padfoot barked at him. Maybe. But there's somebody else I want to ask. Harry replied before he stood up. Padfoot whined due to no longer getting Harry's attention. Don't be such a baby. I'm just going to talk, then I'll go back to being your lovely servant. Harry rolled his eyes before he looked ahead. Padfoot gave him a questioning bark. Just calling the smartest person I know. Harry left tattoo glowed a pale blue as he summoned a specific member of the dead. It had been a while since he had last summoned this person. Harry's wand came in his other hand and he activated a spell to tell the time. He didn't want to make the person stay too long, so he would stop after 5 minutes so there would be no bad effects on either of them. After that, Harry knew he would wait some time before summoning him again. Padfoot let out a noise of surprise when he realized who was being summoned before he let out a happy bark and quickly moved so he was standing next to Harry. Huh. A silver, wispy and transparent 8-year-old boy blinked as he formed in front of them. How's my favorite boy doing? Harry said with a sad smile as he looked at his godson. The boy looked up to the speaker and his eyes became wider before a face-splitting smile made its way onto his face. Dad. He cried before moving forward only to stop. Wait, he still can't touch you, right? He frowned. Sadly, Teddy. Harry said in a sad voice. How is your mum and father doing? Harry asked. Teddy, despite only being his godson, would not call Harry anything other than Dad. Unless you counted Daddy. It saddened Harry that Remus died before he could have taken the parental role that Teddy had needed. They both miss you. Teddy frowned again before he smiled. I'm glad to see you. You too, Ted. Harry smiled. How is everyone treating you? Is anyone being mean to you? No. Ted shook his head. Good, I'd kick their butts if they did, Harry replied, earning a giggle from Teddy. Teddy was about to respond when Padfoot barked. Teddy looked towards Padfoot and his smile came back in full force. Paddy. He cried happily. I missed you. Padfoot let out several barks followed by a small whine and a huff before finishing with a short bark. Huh. He said a lot, but long story short is that he misses you. Harry smiled. Now Ted, I want to talk to you about something. Chapter 17 Harry's proposal to Fury. Natasha sighed as she sat down in the comfiest chair in the apartment she was staying in. Her thoughts were focused primarily on one Harry Potter, even though they did also occasionally go back to the man who slapped her behind during the last meeting. It had been ridiculously easy to trick him into a sparring session. Such a shame she didn't pull her punches as much as she should have. Lovely revenge aside, her main focus was on Potter. The man was an enigma, not just because of all the odd things about him, but also how he was acting. Firstly, he was either denser than she expected or was lying when he said he thought that her shivering was due to being uncomfortable from the bike. She thought it was more likely the second one, as she was very subtle in her physical actions, so he was clearly smart enough to notice during the taxi ride he had placed his hand on her leg and left it there for a good while. He acted like he didn't notice, but unless he had some condition that Shield was unaware of, then Natasha didn't believe that he knew what he was doing. Once they got out, he immediately abandoned her to go shopping on her own. She didn't complain and pretended to do so while actually spying on him from a distance. He did as he said and went into a shop to browse through home security products. He had also spent some time talking with the female shop assistant, though she suspected he was doing more flirting than talking. If the blush on her face was any indication, it didn't make sense to her. Not just that he would ignore her own flirting in favor of flirting with others, but also because he had suddenly switched from being antisocial to flirting with random shop workers to going back to antisocial, which was what he had done as soon as he had left the shop. As far as she knew, he had not gotten her number or anything, but perhaps he was planning to go back there again. A knock on the door had brought her out of her thoughts. Natasha quickly stood up, gun in her hand. In an instant she walked towards the door and looked through the peephole to see none other than the very person she was thinking about, Harry Potter, standing outside of her door. She quickly hid her gun before smoothing out her clothes. She opened it and smiled up at him, seeing as her head just reached his chin. Hi Harry, she said. What are you doing here? Can I ask you to do something for me, please? Harry asked in a polite voice. Sir, she nodded. Well, Miss Romanoff, Harry smirked, watching as her eyes widened and her smile dropped. I want you to tell Fury to expect me in his office tomorrow after lunch. Me and him need to talk. How did you? That's not important right now. Harry cut her off. The question is, are you going to contact him or do I have to do that? Director Fury was standing on the deck of the helicarrier with Agent Hill and Coulson standing behind him along with a group of agents including Clint Barton. Fury had no idea how this meeting was about to go down. Needless to say, he was more than a bit surprised when Agent Romanoff contacted him and told him that Harry Potter had wanted to speak to him. Not only that, but he had also somehow known Agent Romanoff's real identity. That worried Fury beyond anything that words could describe. How did Potter know her identity? What else does he know? There were far too many questions running through his head. He didn't get long to think about these questions as a jet landed in front of them. The jet door opened. Fury and everyone with him were ready to start shooting if needs be. The first person who came out of the jet was Natasha, who walked down the ramp while wearing brown knee-high shoes, black trousers and a black shirt under a brown jacket. Clint looked less tense now that he was sure that Natasha was not hurt. After she had gotten out, the second person walked out and it was none other than Harry Potter. He stopped just on the ramp and looked around. He was wearing black trainers, blue jean, a gray shirt under a black jacket. His gray eyes scanned the area around him as wind flew through his messy white hair and messed it up slightly more. Eventually his eyes stopped when they landed on Fury. He walked forward and towards Fury. The others tensed, but a signal from Fury stopped them from doing anything. Harry stopped right in front of Fury, who looked him in the eye. The two looked at each other, neither willing to speak or move. First, Harry felt reminded more and more of Mad Eye Moody. Fury, on the other hand, felt like he was staring a dangerous predator right in the eye. Everyone else around them got the sense that they were about to potentially witness two dragons fighting. No one was sure how long it lasted, but eventually one of them gave in. Fury had many thoughts flying through his mind, and Harry knew that because he was reading it. He briefly entertained the idea of telling Fury, but decided not to, not now at least. Mr. Potter, Fury said, going first. You probably already know this, but I am Director Fury. It's a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure. Harry softly snorted. I'm sure so I understand that S.H.I.E.L.D. is interested in me. I guess you could say that. Fury nodded. One thing that I would like to know is how you knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. It's easy if you know where to look, Harry said, the corner of his lips pointing upwards slightly for about a second. And where would that be? It is where you are supposed to look, Harry replied without missing a beat. Now, I want to talk to you about something, and what is that supposed to be? I want to work with you, Harry said, surprising Fury and all the others. You want to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury raised an eyebrow. No, I want to work with S.H.I.E.L.D., Harry corrected. The way I see it is you could make things difficult for me, which would make me make things difficult for you. I'd rather not do that. So I am making you an offer. I help you out. You be appreciative enough to stop spying on me. And what exactly do you have to offer S.H.I.E.L.D.? Fury asked. More than you can imagine, Harry replied. Have you asked Agent Romanoff about the gift I gave her? Fury frowned slightly before giving Natasha a questioning look. Sir. Natasha walked forward to Fury. Before we got him on the jet he handed me this, she said as she slowly pulled out a gun and handed it to Fury. You might want to check your armory, Harry suggested. I think you might be missing a gun or two. He added. He still had the original gun back at his apartment. The one Fury was given was simply a magically created copy. Fury's eyes widened as he realized what Harry meant. He glanced at Coulson, who nodded, letting Fury know that he would check the armory. What is the point of this? Fury asked, looking more calm than he felt. Impressed you enough? Harry asked. How the hell did you get this? Fury gestured to the gun. Let's talk in private, Harry suggested, ignoring Fury's question. You can bring one or two trusted people with you if you want, Harry added, knowing that Fury would want to bring in at least Hill and Coulson. And why should I listen to you? Fury looked at him with disbelief and a hint of anger. Because depending on how this meeting goes, I can be your best asset or worse enemy, Harry replied. Trust me when I say the former is better for you. Is that a threat? Fury glared at him. If it must be, Harry said in a bored tone. Look, can we skip the foreplay? Are you capable of listening for more than a few minutes, or am I just wasting my time? Harry finished with a glare that matched Fury's. The two once again fell into silence, with everyone else once again feeling like they were right next to two dangerous animals that could fight any second. Fine. Fury eventually said through gritted teeth. Follow me, woof. Padfoot barked in a questioning tone when Harry arrived back home. Well, he got a job. Harry shrugged before he sat down on the sofa next to Padfoot. Padfoot barked again, so Harry decided to explain more. I am technically just working with S.H.I.E.L.D. but not for S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe the official term is consultant. Or something like that. I'll check later anyway. They give me a decent amount of money and leave me alone now in exchange for me helping them out. Woof. Well, Fury wants me to come in tomorrow to do some tests, Harry replied. I think he wants to see how good I am. Harry added. Woof. No. I don't know if you can join. Woof. Woof woof. I don't know if you get a uniform, but I suppose I can make one for you. Woof. No, I am pretty sure they won't neuter you. Chapter 18 Combat Test. Harry arrived on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier by jet. He would have preferred to arrive by teleporting, but was holding off on that for now. After all, he didn't really want to show off all of his abilities to everyone yet, though he was wondering if he should show off a few just so he didn't have to hide them anymore. But for now, as far as S.H.I.E.L.D. was concerned, he was just an enhanced who had abilities that they weren't entirely sure about. Only the top three knew anything about his abilities, and he had only told them a limited amount. Harry exited the jet, wearing the same clothes as last time. The first two people he met once he got out of the jet happened to be Clint Barton and Natasha Romanoff. Clint was wearing black shoes, trousers, a shirt and a jacket. Natasha wore black shoes, black trousers, a red shirt and black jacket. Romanoff. Barton. Harry nodded in greeting. Potter. Romanoff replied with Clint nodding back. It's nice to see you. I'm guessing that judging by your meeting with Fury you are joining us, she said. Though she wanted to be in the meeting, she was not allowed, but knew she couldn't complain as only the top three were in the meeting with him. Apparently so, Harry responded. Fury said he wanted us to see how good you really are. Clint replied. Yeah. Harry nodded. He mentioned something about tests. Apparently he wants to see how good I am compared to other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Me and Clint are in charge of your examination, Natasha informed. We will be recording everything and sending it to Fury to see. Fair enough. Harry shrugged just as a bark was heard. Padfoot walked out of the jet and climbed down the ramp. Before he stopped next to Harry, he whined before rubbing his head against Harry's leg. Harry sighed and reached down and softly stroked the lovable dog's head. He isn't really used to flying on a jet, Harry explained to Clint and Natasha. You brought your dog with you? Clint asked in a slightly disbelieving voice. He wanted to come. Harry shrugged. Don't worry, he is trained and he won't get in the way. Clint and Natasha looked at each other. It appeared to Harry that they either knew some level of mind arts or were good enough friends to know how to hold a conversation without words. Eventually they looked back at him. If he craps all over the helicarrier, then you're cleaning it up, Natasha said. Fair enough, Harry nodded. Now shall we get on with it? Harry asked. Follow us, Natasha said over her shoulder as she began walking away with Clint behind her. Harry and Padfoot following behind the both of them. Padfoot barked at Harry. I'll ask about the uniform later, Harry whispered. Right, so what's the deal here? Harry asked as he found himself standing in the middle of a training room. He was currently stood in the middle of a group of training mats. Surrounding him was a group of SHIELD trainees, wearing black boots and trousers plus a blue shirt. Outside of the group, Natasha and Clint stood with Padfoot sitting next to them. Clint had a camera in his hands and was aiming at Harry. This is just a basic combat test, Natasha began explaining. These trainees will be your opponents. We'll start light and have just 5 of them attack you, right? And how realistic is the fighting going to be? Harry asked. Light contact. Hard hitting. What am I allowed to do? Nothing that would cause permanent damage, Natasha answered just as Padfoot gave Harry a supportive bark. Begin. Clint suddenly shouted like a switch was pressed. Harry had suddenly became laser focused. Harry quickly turned around and saw 2 trainees run at him together. The first one threw a punch that Harry ducked under. He hit the second trainee in the face with a spinning kick that sent him a couple of steps back before he fell on his back. The first trainee turned and threw another punch, but Harry caught him. One hand grabbed the trainee's wrist and the other grabbed his shirt, and he found himself being thrown overhead and landing on the ground. A third trainee ran towards Harry, who quickly reacted and jumped towards him and hit him with a knee that dropped him instantly. 2 more trainees ran at Harry at the same time. Harry smirked and moved towards them. He's not bad, Clint whispered to Natasha, who nodded in agreement as Padfoot lowered his head and covered his eyes with his paws. Natasha allowed an amused expression to come onto her face when she noticed it. He's cute, Natasha smiled. You like Potter? Clint blinked. I meant the dog. Natasha sighed. She was about to say more when suddenly a noise brought her attention back to the trainee mat and she saw all the trainees laying down on the mats. So, Harry said to Natasha and Clint, what's next? Harry asked. Oh, nothing much, Clint said in a dismissive tone. We'll just do some more hand-to-hand combat tests and see how good you are with weapons before we take you down to the gun range and surprise attack. Clint suddenly yelled. Harry turned at an incredibly fast speed and managed to avoid a kick from a 6th trainee. Harry grabbed his leg before he could drop it with one arm while his other arm wrapped around the trainee's neck. Harry threw himself backwards and threw the trainee overhead, causing him to land on his front. Harry quickly rolled up to his feet and looked around to see if there would be any more surprise attacks. Anyone else? Harry asked Clint. No, not really. Chapter 19, A Deadly Gamble. Natasha so far was admittedly impressed with Harry's combat abilities. He was clearly experienced in the art of hand-to-hand combat. He was also skilled at using other weapons such as batons, though if Natasha had to choose a weapon for him, then she would give him a knife, as that is where he appeared to shine. She would like to see how talented he is with a real knife. As of the moment they were in the gun range, to start with, they had him disassemble and assemble a gun. He did both far ahead of the time for someone who would have just recently started learning how to use a gun. The way he seemed at ease with it told Natasha that he was rather bored with the process, which led to her wondering just how much experience he had with them. All right, the gun range instructor said. When you're ready, just fire at the targets, he said as he pointed to the targets on the other side of the room. Do I have to aim for a specific part? Harry asked. Try a headshot if you want. The instructor rolled his eyes. Fine. Harry shrugged before he aimed his gun at the target and fired. Once the gun was emptied out, everyone looked at the target and few gaped at seeing the fact that all the bullets had hit the exact same spot on the target's forehead. Clint and Natasha, for their part, merely raised an eyebrow and looked amused. Do you want me to go again? Harry asked the instructor as he reloaded his gun. UHNO. I think that'll be all right. The instructor refused. Fair enough, Harry said as he shifted the gun into his left hand. Without looking at the target, he aimed his gun towards it and fired one more time, the bullet hitting the exact same spot as the other bullets. One for luck, Harry said by way of an explanation. Woof, Padfoot barked. Harry mentally translated it into stop showing off. A long while later, after another bunch of tests, Harry was finally allowed to leave along with Padfoot. Natasha would have been really surprised if Fury didn't want him. After looking at his results, she knew that Harry had impressed Clint with his shooting and weapon skill if nothing else. While observing him, Natasha noticed one thing above all else: the ease in which he did everything. Every move, every act looked like it had been done 1,000 times before. That was something that she found odd. Well, on other things she found odd, despite looking young and only being 20, he gave off the presence of someone much older. Natasha had met her fair share of agents and soldiers. By now she could tell the trained from the untrained within less than a minute. She knew that Clint, along with Fury, Hill and Coulson, could also see the difference. Harry Potter was very much still a mystery to her. The thing is, mysteries don't last long around her. When Harry and Padfoot arrived back home, Harry had immediately got to getting Padfoot's food ready, and once he was done, he immediately made himself a pizza. With a wave of his wand, the two sat down and began eating while watching TV. Once they were both done, Padfoot softly barked at Harry. Sorry. Harry shook his head and asked, but they don't have a uniform for you. Padfoot whined in a soft and disappointed voice. Sorry. Harry apologized. There is good news though, Harry added. Padfoot gave him a questioning look. They're not going to neuter you. When Harry and Padfoot arrived back home, Harry had immediately got to getting Padfoot's food ready, and once he was done, he immediately made himself a pizza. With a wave of his wand, the two sat down and began eating while watching TV. Once they were both done, Padfoot softly barked at Harry. Sorry. Harry shook his head and asked, but they don't have a uniform for you. Padfoot whined in a soft and disappointed voice. A couple of days later, Harry was called to S.H.I.E.L.D. for his first assignment, which was why Harry found himself standing in Director Fury's office with Director Fury sat behind his desk, Agent Hill standing on his right, but Agent Coulson was not here for one reason or another. Harry didn't ask. A while back, one of our agents was sent to find out as much information as she could about a drug deal, Fury said as Agent Hill handed him a tablet. Harry looked at the tablet and saw a picture of a female agent with blonde hair and blue eyes. She hasn't reported in at her scheduled time and we have been unable to contact her. We currently believe that she is being held captive, Fury said as Harry swiped the tablet with his finger so it showed him the next picture, which was on a very large, gray, 3-story building. Harry was guessing that it was in another country by looking at the quality and look of the building plus the sandy environment around it. The people holding her captive are not a good people, to say the least. You want me to rescue her? Harry guessed as he reached the page about not good people that Fury was talking about. Yes, Fury nodded. I do. We don't know if she's alive, Fury's admitted. Fine. Check and see if she is alive, and if she is, then rescue her. What about those who would prefer if I didn't rescue her? Kill them. Capture them. That is entirely up to you. Though between us, I wouldn't weep if they happen to stop causing problems. However, we estimate there to be at least 100 hostiles at any given time. If you include those guarding the outside, you will take a team with you, and that's not necessary. Harry cut him off. I can handle it on my own. Consider the bad guys a short way from dead and your agent a short way from being saved, providing she is still alive. There are 100 guys there with guns, knives, and probably a few other things, Agent Hill reminded him as she spoke in a disbelieving tone. You might be an enhanced, but you are just one man. 100 guys is nothing I can't handle, Harry said in a dismissive voice. Are you serious? Deadly. So much so that I'd be willing to bet on it. You up for a bet, Hill? That's Agent Hill to you, Agent Hill said with a soft glare. What type of bet? She asked curiously. If I can't handle the 100 bad guys but still make it back alive, then I will allow you and Director Fury to ask me 5 questions each, and I will answer them with full honesty, plus S.H.I.E.L.D. won't have to pay me for the next year or so. However, if I can handle it, then I get to spend a night at your place, Harry said, tempted to smirk at the surprised look on Fury's face and the shocked and disbelieving look on Agent Hill's. Are you serious? She asked, raising an eyebrow at him. Very. Harry nodded. He watched as Agent Hill seemed to think about the offer and mentally weighed up the pros and cons of accepting Harry's offer along with the pros and cons of refusing to accept it. Fine, she said eventually. You've got a deal. Surprise developments aside, Fury said in a dry voice, but are you sure that you can handle this? Fury asked Harry. I've got sufficient motivation. Harry shrugged in response. Fury glanced at Hill before looking back at Harry. Fair enough, he said eventually. but I am assigning a backup team to immediately take action should you fail. Fair enough, Harry replied. Is there anything else I should know? Harry asked. Not that I can think of, Fury replied. Any information that you need will be on the file, Fury said as he gestured to the tablet in Harry's hand. Okay. Harry nodded. Wear something nice, Harry added to Hill before he turned and walked away. Chapter 20. Eyes in the shadows. Clint Barton was sat in a jet along with a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Barton had his trusty bow with him along with a quiver full of arrows. The other agents had opted to go for guns. Sometimes Clint couldn't help but wish people showed more appreciation for the skill needed to use a bow and arrow. What are we waiting for? One agent asked. There's one more person coming, Clint replied. Fury told him that Potter would be with them and would be going first. If Potter failed, then Clint and the team of agents would move in. Clint was personally looking forward to seeing what would happen if Potter was let loose. In Clint's mind, it would either be a great disappointment or something brilliant. Probably not for the bad guys though. Boss. One agent tapped Clint on the arm before gesturing to the person who was walking up the ramp and into the jet. Clint looked at the person, and to Clint's credit, he didn't react beyond an eyebrow raise. The person was dressed in black combat boots and trousers, a gray shirt that fit to his body like second skin, and a black hooded robe with the hood up. His face wasn't visible as it was covered in shadows that seemed unwilling to disappear. The only thing that could be seen through the shadows was two bright emerald orbs. He walked in, ignoring the looks he was getting from the other agents. He sat opposite Clint. Who the hell is this guy? One agent said with disbelief. He's with us, Clint replied before he looked at the new arrival. The name's Grim, right? Clint asked, using the codename that Fury told him to use for Potter. It didn't take a genius to guess who this was. Grim simply nodded and sat absolutely still. His back was straight and he was looking straight at Clint. Are you kidding? Another agent asked. Director Fury wants to give him a chance, Clint replied. If you have a problem with that, then you can go and see him. The other agents stayed silent, none of them willing to go complain if it meant having to complain to Fury. The jet doors closed before the jet took off. The other agents would occasionally glance towards Grim. Yet none of them said anything. The loudest thing they would do is softly snort at Grim. They all also knew that Grim would get the first shot at extracting the agent and that they would move in. If he failed, as far as the agents were concerned, it was more a case of when he would fail. Grim, for his part, was unnervingly still, so much so that the other agents would sometimes wonder if he was awake. The only movement was an occasional twitch in his hands, and sometimes his emerald orbs, which Clint believed was his eyes, would occasionally disappear into the shadows before reappearing like the man was blinking. If it bothered anyone, they didn't comment on it. All right, Clint said as they neared the end of their long and awkward jet ride. We're flying over the target location. We will. Clint was interrupted as Grim finally moved and stood up. Grim moved towards the jet doors and pressed the button required to open them. Everyone looked at him with disbelief as the jet doors opened. What are you doing? One agent shouted over the wind. Barton. Grim spoke. His voice echoed throughout the jet, low and demonic. You guys land and be ready for pickup, he said before he jumped out the jet. Was he wearing a parachute? One agent blurted out. No, he wasn't, Clint replied. The door burst off its hinges and crashed onto the ground as the person responsible walked in. Two men had quickly readied their guns and fired. After using an excessive amount of bullets, they stopped shooting and moved forward. While reloading, they had only taken a few steps when a cutting curse flew through the doorway and struck one in the throat just as two piercing curses hit the other in the chest. Both fell down to the floor as Grim walked. Ingram, when he wasn't known as Harry Potter, calmly walked in. He glanced at the bodies before he continued walking. Right now he wasn't a bored wizard, nor was he an innocent young boy. He was Grim, the army killer in Harry's old world. Grims were omens of death. It had been said that they would bring the demise of whoever encountered them. If you saw a Grim, then you were going to die. It was a name that Harry had earned. Those who messed with him didn't stay in the land of the living for very long. Harry's only real rule was not harming innocent people and children, and the men he was going after were neither of those. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s file, Fury's mind, and Harry's own personal research confirmed that fact. Harry remembered the first time he ever killed someone. It was in self-defense, but he still felt bad about it. Not that anybody had cared enough to ask, as he was shipped back to his abusive relatives a short while after coming out of the hospital wing. The first time Harry had willingly killed, he had originally felt disgusted and sickened by himself, but he changed as the body count rose. Sick turned into numb. Three men came from up the corner of the hallway. Grim aimed his wand at them and three beams shot out of his wand and crashed into the men. sending them back into a wall. They bounced off the wall and fell to the floor just as Grim followed up with a trio of killing curses. Grim summoned a handgun from one of the dead bodies as he turned the corner. Are you sure that this is a good idea? Agent Hill asked Director Fury as Coulson and Fury were in Fury's office, worried about your bet. Fury asked lightly while internally thinking about if it was a good idea. Bet, sir. Coulson raised an eyebrow. Agent Hill and Mr. Potter have made a bet, Fury replied. If Mr. Potter fails to deal with the estimated 100 hostiles, then Agent Hill and I are allowed to ask him a total of 10 questions which he will answer with full honesty, and if he can, sir. Coulson asked. What then? If he can, then he gets to spend a night with Hill, Fury said as he gestured to Hill. Coulson looked between Fury and a frowning Hill for several seconds as he struggled to work out if he had just heard right. If can, then he gets to spend a night with Hill. Coulson repeated slowly, as if speaking a new language. That's what I said. Fury nodded. Coulson stared between Hill and Fury again. A few seconds later a laugh escaped him before he could stop himself. Chapter 21 Unseen Fury. The gun that Grim had taken was empty as its final bullet pierced through a man's eye. As the man fell to the floor, another stood up and had aimed his gun at Grim. A disarming spell from Grim caused his gun to fly out of his hand. Grim threw the empty gun at the man's head. It bounced off his forehead and was wandlessly summoned back into Grim's empty left hand, only for Grim to toss it again at the exact same spot. Grim summoned it back again and threw it at the same spot one more time before the man fell on his back. Grim followed up with a bone breaker to his skull just to make sure the man stayed down. As far as Grim was concerned, it was better to be safe than sorry. Grim walked over the body and turned into the next hallway. He saw 3 doors in front of him. One was at the end of the hallway. The second door was near the end of the hallway and on his right. The third and closest door was a couple of steps ahead on his left. Grim waved his wand over the door on his left and made it see through. He saw about 5 hostiles in the room. Grim cancelled the spell and walked forwards and towards the door on the right. He waved his wand and repeated the same spell only to reveal 7 people inside. Grim rolled his shoulders before he cancelled the spell. He kicked open the door and charged in. The door slowly closed behind him as the sounds of screaming echoed from the room. The screams naturally attracted the attention from the men from the previous room. One man quickly picked up a gun and exited the room to go see what the screaming was about, while the others picked up their own guns. As he reached the door to the room that Grim had entered, it was blasted from its hinges and slammed against the man, flattening him against the wall opposite. Grim rushed out the room and slammed his body into the door, causing it to sandwich the man between itself and the wall even more. Grim plucked the gun out of the man's hand and aimed it towards the direction of the other room. The first man that walked out was immediately hit with a bullet between his eyes. Grim aimed his gun at the man between the door and wall before firing 2 bullets into the man's head. Grim saw another man exit from the room and aim a gun at him. Grim teleported quickly so that he was behind the man. The man blinked in confusion at the loss of his target but didn't get to think too much about it before getting shot in the back of the head. Grim looked into the room to see the 2 remaining hostiles aim their guns at him. Grim quickly made a shield with his wand that easily blocked all the bullets. When their guns were finally empty, they looked at him with no shortage of fear and disbelief. Grim didn't waste time and quickly shot the first hostile with 2 bullets to the head before doing the same with the second. Grim walked away and walked towards the exit. Before he reached it, he waved his wand to check for any bad guys that could be on the other side. He saw just one standing next to the wall, clearly ready to shoot whoever walked through the door. Grim aimed his gun at the man's head and fired a bullet straight through the wall and into the man's skull. Grim walked through the door and shot the man one more time. The sound of footsteps from down the hall told Grim that multiple hostiles were coming. Grim tossed the gun away and moved in the direction of the footsteps with his wand raised. Grim cast the Imperious Curse on the first person he saw and made him attack the others. Grim waved his wand several times and created several venomous snakes after some whispered instructions in Parseltown and a few waves of his wand to make them invisible. They slithered in the direction of the hostiles. Grim made himself invisible but put a shield up in case a trigger-happy idiot with a gun decided to randomly fire down a hallway. Grim walked down the hall and as he turned the corner he found a group of men down on the floor. Few dead and the few that were alive were crying out in pain and fear as they struggled to see what was repeatedly biting them. Grim made himself and the snakes visible, shooting their fear levels even higher. Grim, deciding that he didn't really have time to waste, quickly ended the men with a few waves of his wand before he got rid of the snakes and continued moving. A short while later Grim saw a small group of men with guns charging towards him. Grim jabbed his wand up, removing the light from the room. The men began firing. Bullets were heard for several seconds along with screams before the lights came back, revealing the very same group dead on the floor after Clint and his team landed. They had exited the jet and moved in the direction of the target building. When they stopped at their checkpoint, Clint looked in the direction of the building only to see a window on the second floor break as a body fell out of it. "Sir," one agent said after looking through some binoculars, "there are a ton of bodies around the perimeter." "Well boys, today might just be an easy work day," Barton replied as he pulled out his own binoculars and made use of the thermal imaging feature to get a look inside. Barton knew that Fury was definitely going to want to know as much as possible about this Chapter 22 brutal assault in a large room on the top floor. 20 men with various guns stood with their guns aimed at the door. None of these men were deaf, which meant that they couldn't have ignored the sounds of screaming and gunfire that started from below them and had recently begun. Coming from the same floor at the opposite end of the door was a chair with the person currently occupying it, the blonde SHIELD agent that Grimm had been sent to extract. Tied to either legs were tied to the chair legs with her arms tied to the arms rest while her mouth was gagged and her eyes blindfolded. Behind her was the leader of these men and he had a gun shoved against the back of her head. "Your friends are here to save you," the leader whispered into her ear. "They will not succeed." The man would have likely said more if not for the interruption that came in the sound of screams from outside. The leader kept his gun pressed against her head while the others kept theirs aimed at the door, ready to fire at the slightest movement. If the leader had looked up, then he might have possibly seen Grimm perched in the rafters. Grimm aimed his wand down and shot an imperious curse at the leader. The leader's eyes glazed as he stopped pointing the wand at the agent and moved past her. "Hey!" the leader barked at the men. "All of you stand there," he said as he pointed to the side of the room. "But why?" One man asked, only for the leader to shoot him in the head, shocking the other men. "Anyone else need a reason?" the leader asked. The men shook their heads before all moving to the area where they were told to go. The leader picked up the machine gun from the dead body after putting his own gun down. The leader looked towards the door before suddenly turning to the men and firing as many bullets as he can. As soon as the leader began firing, Grimm placed a shield around the tied-up agent in case any stray bullet went her way. The leader was able to take out a great many of his own men before one of them was able to find the ability to react and fire back. The leader went down as 3 bullets pierced through his body. Grimm didn't waste time and cast an Imperious on a random member of the group and had him fire. He too was eventually put down, but at this point there was only 5 men left alive. Grimm shot 2 cutting curses that managed to get to throats before he jumped down and fired a killing curse which struck true. Grimm shielded against their bullets. Once they stopped firing, they looked at him, unable to believe he was not dead. Clint and the other agents with him continued observing the building when suddenly they saw 2 men thrown out of the top floor of the building and crash land on the ground. "Ouch," Clint said to himself before he and the other continued watching. "Son of a bitch," Clint whispered to himself a few minutes later when he saw Grimm walk out of the building while carrying the female agent in his arms. "How the hell?" Another agent trailed off in disbelief. "Come on guys," Clint said after shaking his head. "We're done here." Fury sat behind his desk, returning to reading the report he was given after he had read the letter from Harry Potter which requested that in the future he be sent to missions on his own so he didn't have to worry about others. Fury frowned as he found himself deep in thought while reading the report. Not only had Harry Potter, or Grimm as he liked to be called, rescued the agent, but he had also killed each and every hostile in the place. Fury found it hard to believe, but he did. The reports were even harder to believe. Some of the men were shot, stabbed and things like that, but the others suffered from some harder to explain things like broken skulls and bones with no damage to the skin. Some were bit by snakes repeatedly. There was even a couple of men who, according to the reports, seemed to have no actual cause of death and had simply just dropped dead. Fury was of 2 minds about this. On one hand, he was more glad than words could describe about the fact that Grimm was on his side. While Grimm didn't really work for S.H.I.E.L.D., he was still a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. who could do a lot of good. And if having Grimm on his side meant that there would be less need to risk his own agents, then so be it. However, Grimm did bring up some concerns. What was to stop Grimm from being used against S.H.I.E.L.D.? Grimm had told Fury that his powers were magical and that to his knowledge there was nobody else with abilities like his own. But what if there was? Would S.H.I.E.L.D. getting a magical user mean that somebody else would get one to try and match or outclass S.H.I.E.L.D.? Another problem was the fact that Grimm currently had no loyalty to S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury knew that it could take only one higher up to make a great offer, and then Fury could lose Grimm's loyalty. Sure, Fury knew his identity, but Grimm struck Fury as the adaptive sort. Fury needed to know what made Grimm tick. If not to gain his loyalty to S.H.I.E.L.D., then at least to stop him should he go rogue. It was something that Fury had to put some considerable thought into it. While thinking, Fury also realized one thing. One thing that was incredibly important. Hill had lost the bet. Chapter 23 Aftermath. Maria Hill was very tempted to growl as she stood in her bathroom getting ready. Though her anger was more directed at herself, she had lost the bet. She knew it was a possibility but didn't actually think that it would happen. Still, it was a calculated risk. If she hadn't lost, then she and Fury would have likely have learnt some extremely valuable information, but she hadn't won. So she would own up and follow through. She exited the bathroom, wearing a purple silk robe that ended just above her thighs. Her hair was allowed to be let loose and fell straight past her shoulders. She looked at Harry Potter to find him sitting at the edge of her bed, wearing jeans and a white shirt. "What's to stop me from not having sex with you?" Maria asked, wanting to see his reaction. "After all, the deal was that I let you stay the night. Of course you don't have to sleep with me, but you do know what was implied." Harry smirked. "And if you feel the need to go back on implied bets, then in the future I may feel the need to go back on other things, implied or not." Maria was tempted to let out an amused noise but managed to stop herself. She walked towards him as she slowly removed her robe and allowed it to drop off of her and down to the ground, leaving her standing in nothing but a black bra and underwear. "I hope you enjoy yourself," she said as she leaned forwards and placed her hands on his legs. "Because this is one night only," she reminded him as she looked him in the eye. "Better make the most of it then," Harry replied as he grabbed her by the hips and pulled her so she was now straddling him. Her hands went to his shoulders when she landed on top of him. Harry let his left hand stay where it was but allowed his right to reach up and place itself behind her head before he pulled her into a kiss. Hill froze at first but eventually started kissing back as she let one hand go up and run through his hair while the other rubbed his shoulders and chest. "Fuck it," she hissed a few minutes later as she pulled her lips away from him. She placed both hands on his chest and pushed him so he was lying down on the bed. "Let's get this over with. You have something better to do." Harry calmly raised an eyebrow. "Shut it," she said as she grinded against him before leaning down and kissing him. "If I have to do this, then I am going to enjoy myself and get it over with as quickly as possible. Got it?" Instead of immediately getting a verbal response, Hill found herself flipped over onto her back with Harry looking down at her. "Got it?" Harry whispered before his lips recaptured hers. "Oh fuck." Hill let out a deep breath as she laid in bed with Harry, both without a stitch of clothes as their bodies were covered by nothing but the bed sheet. "Wow. That wasn't half bad," she commented, her hair spread out over her pillow as her chest moved up and down with each breath. "I'm sorry, but if I recall correctly, then you were the one who was screaming my name," Harry reminded her as he lay next to her. "Shut it," Hill said softly as she swatted his arm. "What was the thing you did with your tongue?" she suddenly asked. "Parseltongue," Harry answered. "I can speak to snakes," he added when she gave him a look that said she clearly did not what he was talking about. "I can speak to snakes. They speak back to me. You speak to snakes," she repeated as if testing the words. "They are surprisingly intelligent." "Well, that's good to know," she said eventually. "Should I expect Fury to find out that I can speak to snakes?" Harry asked lightly. "I'm not sure. Depends on if I am willing to tell him how I found out," Hill replied. "You can speak to any other animals?" she asked curiously. "A couple." Harry frowned before looking back at Hill. "You want to go one more time?" he offered. Hill stayed quiet for several moments as she thought on the answer. "Fine, but this time I'm on top," she said in a voice that said she would not accept any arguments. "Works for me." Harry shrugged right before Hill straddled him. "Good." She grinned before she placed her hands on both sides of his head and leaned down to capture his lips with her own. Harry gladly returned fire as he placed his hands on her waist before allowing them to go up and grab a handful. Chapter 24 Unfinished Meals. "Well, that was enjoyable," Harry said to Hill as he and Hill stepped out of the shower. "The shower or the sex?" she raised an eyebrow as she took a towel and wrapped it around her body. "I was referring to the shower sex, but the shower and regular sex are also enjoyable on their own," Harry replied as his wand appeared in his hand. He cast a drying charm over himself. "Do you want me to dry you off?" Harry offered. She looked hesitant before nodding. "That would be appreciated," she said as Harry waved his wand over her. Hill briefly felt like she had been placed in a giant towel and a second later she was completely dry. "Useful," she commented. "Indeed." Harry nodded just before clothes manifested and he found himself wearing black trainers, Blue jeans, a white shirt and a black jacket. Again, useful, she said as she looked him up and down. Thanks. So I guess I will be off now. Harry replied. I guess so. She nodded. Just to let you know that if I find a file about my sexual prowess in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s records, then I will be furious. Harry added, half joking. So I should stick to writing on the bathroom walls? Hill asked in an innocent voice. Only if I can do the same, Harry replied before he gave her a small nod as he walked out. Once he had left Hill's place, Harry teleported back into his own apartment to find Padfoot sitting on his sofa and watching TV. Padfoot looked at him and gave him a questioning look followed by a small bark. No. Harry shook his head. Me and Hill just slept together. Woof. No, she is not pregnant. Harry rolled his eyes. Woof. No, there is not going to be a yet at the end of the sentence. Woof. No, I am not, nor will I ever be neutered. Woof. Pretty sure. Harry had placed Padfoot's bowl in front of him before he waved. He placed his own food, a burger and chips, down on his table. Harry had sat down and was about to eat when suddenly knock was heard on his door. Harry sighed at the interruption before he teleported to the door. Harry peeked through the peephole and saw none other than Natasha Romanoff at his door. Harry stepped back and slowly opened the door just enough for him to peek out and look at her. She was wearing blue jeans with blue trainers and a white t-shirt. Her hair was let loose and descended past her shoulders. In her left hand was a black folder and on her wrist was a silver watch. I'm not buying anything, Harry said quickly. Very funny. Natasha rolled her eyes. Are you going to invite me in? She asked. Not really. Harry shrugged. Just open the damn door, she said with an amused smile as she resisted the urge to roll her eyes for a second time. Harry sighed before fully opening the door. I don't mean to be rude, but I was about to eat, Harry said. Well, I'm sorry to ruin your meal, Natasha said as she entered. Oh, hi boy. She smiled at Padfoot, who looked up from eating his food and barked in greeting before returning to eating. Yeah, don't bother trying to talk to him until his bowl is empty, Harry said as he closed the door. Nope, Harry said quickly when he saw Natasha go near his food. Take either of our food and you will be bitten. What are you doing here anyway? What? I can't just come and visit, she said with an innocent expression that was matched by her voice. No, Harry said as he walked past her and sat down at his table and decided to start eating as he was not going to hold off on his food for uninvited guests. Well, a couple of things actually, Natasha commented as she sat down next to him. She reached for a chip only to get her hand slapped away. She sent him a playful glare before she leaned back and continued talking. First thing I want to know is, did you really sleep with Hill? That's the first thing you want to know. Harry stopped eating and raised an eyebrow at her. Me and Barton have a bet about if you really did or not, Natasha explained. Ask Hill and my answer is whatever she says, Harry said dismissively. Also, you did sleep with her, she said. Padfoot barked from his position, and to Natasha it sounded surprisingly like he was agreeing with her. Fine, Harry sighed. I did. How did you find out? I'm a spy in an intelligence organization. You do the math, she replied. I wouldn't worry about all of S.H.I.E.L.D. knowing about it. Not yet anyway, though you would be a bit of a legend if they did find out. I don't know why people can't just get a life and mind their own fucking business, Harry complained in a tired voice. People will always be interested in other people, Natasha said, speaking like she was telling him an obvious fact. By the way, Fury wanted me to give you this, Natasha said as she gestured to the folder which she put on the table. I'm supposed to wait until you read it, then call back after you've decided if you are going to accept or not. I'm eating, Harry reminded her. Chapter 25 Past and Present. I'm not in a rush, Natasha shrugged as she glanced towards the TV. Oh, I love this episode. She grinned and leaned back. Harry was tempted to make a comment but decided to instead just focus on eating. Once he was done, Harry cleaned up his table. Once he finished, he sat back down and looked at the file, though not before he glanced at Padfoot and Natasha, who were now both sitting together with Natasha petting Padfoot's head. The folder contained a rather simple mission involving infiltrating a building and getting a copy of some data. Tell Blackbeard I'll do it, Harry said once he was done reading. He held the folder out and Natasha took it. Blackbeard? She asked in an amused voice. He's got an eye patch, beard and a ship. You look me in the eye and tell me you have never once thought the word pirate while thinking about him, Harry challenged her. Maybe once or twice, Natasha admitted with a small smirk. Bit of an easy joke though. I'm sorry, but do I look like I specialize in creativity? Still, You shouldn't go for the low-hanging fruit anyway. Fury will be glad that you've accepted. Natasha replied but made no effort to move as she kept her eyes on the TV. Harry sat back and simply watched alongside her. I read the report on your mission by the way, she said a few minutes later after the episode had ended, so just anyone can read that then. Does it bother you? She asked him, ignoring his question for the time being. Does what bother me? All the people you killed, does it bother you? She asked. Her voice was more curious than accusatory. No, Harry answered honestly. No, it doesn't bother me. What about you? What about me? Don't play dumb. I know who you are and I know that I am not the only killer in this room. Does it bother you? Natasha was silent for several moments before she replied. You mean me being a killer or you being a killer? Either, both, whichever. No, she said as she looked him in the eye. No, it doesn't bother me. If you don't mind me asking, why did you settle on Grimm for a name? I mean, there are so many other more flattering choices. You mean like Black Widow or Hawkeye? Harry retorted. Better than Grimm, she replied. That just makes you sound like an antisocial loner. I am an antisocial loner, Harry pointed out. I can break you out of that. She smirked at him. She would have said more if she wasn't interrupted by a beeping noise. She pulled out her phone and looked at it. Damn, she whispered before she stood up. I'll tell Fury you've accepted the mission, she added before she petted Padfoot one more time before she walked over to the door with Harry standing up and walking after her. She opened the door and glanced back at Harry. I'll see you later, she said before she left his apartment. Harry was about to close the door when he noticed someone coming in the opposite direction that Natasha had left in. Harry, Alexis said quickly, can I talk to you? She asked hopefully as she rushed forwards and stopped in front of him, hoping to stop him in case he decided to close the door. Go on, Harry said. I know our last conversation was a little. She paused as she tried to think up the right word. Awkward. She eventually settled on. Too wanted to say sorry. It's fine, Harry said dismissively. I'm not really experienced with this shit, but I think I probably could have let you down in a nicer way. Anyway, I'm sorry and I was hoping that there were no bad feelings. No bad feelings. Don't worry about it. Harry waved her off. Welly, I'm glad. She smiled. I guess I should go now. Probably. Harry agreed as he nodded. He waited for her to go, but she seemed unable to move. I'll be off now, she said a few seconds later as she gestured in the direction she had come from. Yep. Harry nodded, waiting for her to leave. Yeah. She nodded slowly. All right, Harry said after losing what little patience he had. Here's what's going to happen. I am going to close this door and once it is closed your legs will activate and carry you away. Got it? Ooh, got it. She nodded. Goodbye, Harry said before he closed the door. He shook his head before walking back in and sitting on his sofa. Woof. Padfoot barked. No, I am not getting with Alexis. Woof. Woof. You only like her because she petted you, Harry responded. Chapter 26 The Search for Tony Stark. Woof. Yes, it is. I don't know who you are trying to fool. Woof. No. I am not buying you a phone, Harry replied as he rolled his eyes. Woof. Who the hell would you even call? Harry couldn't help but ask. A year later, and Harry found himself settled into a nice routine. For the most part, his life would consist of relaxing at home and occasionally doing jobs for S.H.I.E.L.D. The only real change was also the random nights he would spend with Hill. Apparently, she liked their first night enough to have a repeat performance. Harry didn't complain though. She understood that it was all simply physical, so he didn't worry much about feelings being involved. Plus, they had only spent a few nights together spread out throughout the whole own week. After returning from his last mission, Harry received a call from S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, Harry asked as he answered the phone. Mr. Potter, Coulson's voice replied. We have a mission for you. What type of mission? Harry asked. A rescue mission, hopefully. We need you to find someone, and if they are alive, we'd like for you to bring him back. Who? Tony Stark. Apparently, Tony Stark had been kidnapped in Afghanistan after he had gone to demonstrate the Jericho missile, a new weapon developed by Stark Industries. According to the reports that Harry was given, he learned that Stark was kidnapped after the demonstration and hadn't been seen since and was unable to be found by anyone despite various attempts at doing so. Harry calmly sat on his sofa as he looked over the information he had received on Tony Stark. Harry knew who the man was. It was near impossible to not hear about the man when you had access to the internet and a TV. Tony Stark was pretty much the richest person in the country, if not the world, yet he didn't spend all of his life enjoying his fame and money and doing nothing, just a large part of it. Tony Stark also happened to be a genius, even from a young age, and was able to build circuit boards and robots before most could even think about it. When he was 4 years old, he designed his first circuit board, and when he was almost 7 he built a V8 motorbike engine. At 16, Tony won the 4th annual MIT Robot Design Award. When Tony was 17, he graduated summa cum laude from MIT. The fact that he had access to the money, equipment and education necessary to build those things definitely helped, but it did not take away the fact Stark was a genius. Many of the inventions in his weapons company were in fact designed by him, which was why Stark had nicknames such as the Merchant of Death. Stark held a lot of value for his company alone, as it was one of the most successful and rich companies in the world and a major supplier to the military. It was founded in 1940 by Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, and the man who ran the company from its inception up until his death in 1991, after which a man named Obadiah Stane was appointed interim CEO. Then Tony Stark officially took the position shortly after at the age of 21. Under Stark's control, the company flourished financially and built a ton of weapons. Of course, the company did other things, but its main focus was definitely on weapons. As for Stark, he was a party animal. If he was not inventing, then he was usually getting drunk with women. Stark's father was also a rich genius who happened to work with Captain America in World War II. Harry suspected that Tony was sort of like Draco Malfoy, but smart and without the whole being an insufferable prat part, though. With that being said, Harry wasn't sure how much of a prat he was. Tony had a few people he would consider close, one of which would be Harold Hogan, was a former boxer who goes by the nickname of Happy. Following the end of his boxing career, he was hired by Tony Stark to be his personal chauffeur and bodyguard. Another person he was close to was Colonel James Rupert Rhodes, also known as Rhodey. Rhodey happened to be an officer with the United States Air Force and liaison between the military and the Department of Acquisitions and Stark Industries. He and Stark had met at MIT and apparently had become friends from there. He had also attended the demonstration with Stark. Another person of interest was Obadiah Stane, a businessman who worked in partnership with Howard Stark during the early years of Stark Industries. After Howard's death, Stane took over as interim CEO of the company, and his brief tenure as CEO ended shortly after, since he was forced to step down from his position to become the firm's second in command when Tony Stark officially took over as CEO. As far as everyone is concerned, Stane is a mentor and friend to Stark. As far as Harry was concerned, that did not make him any less of a suspect. The last person of interest was a red-headed woman named Virginia Potts. She had a couple of jobs before working for Stark Industries in the financial department. After that, she had become Tony Stark's personal assistant, and the two had apparently grown close. Harry was not sure if their relationship was entirely professional. Chapter 27: The Blood Trail. Harry teleported to the last known location of Tony Stark. His clothes shifted and he was suddenly wearing his grim look, though he hadn't put the hood up. Thankfully, magic kept him from getting too hot. Harry looked around for several minutes to search for any clues about where Stark would have gone. Once Harry stopped doing that, he pulled out a vial of blood. A small vial of Tony Stark's blood. Harry had taken the blood from a hospital and left a magical copy in its place. Harry's plan was a rather simple one. He was going to use Stark's blood to find Stark. If Stark was a wizard, then Harry could have probably grabbed any single possession of his and track him through his magic. However, since he wasn't, the next best thing was blood. Harry could have used a point me spell and have his wand point in the direction of Stark, but this was quicker. Blood magic was something that was strictly forbidden in the wizarding world, mostly because it was mostly used for dark or destructive purposes, including controlling or harming others from a distance. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion, it could not be used the same way on muggles. A lot of blood magic involved the magic inside the blood. That was why a muggle with a wizard's blood could not harm the wizard through the blood, but a wizard with a wizard's blood could, as they were both magical. Plus, it was a rare form of magic, so much so that even Harry barely knew anything about it. Since Stark was not magical, it limited what Harry could do, but fortunately it did not stop him from being able to track Stark. Harry opened the vial, and with a few waves of his wand the blood rose from the vial before taking the shape of a bird. The bird flew around him in a circle before it decided on which direction it wanted and fell off. Harry transformed into his animagus form and flew after the blood bird. A while later Harry was still flying when suddenly the bloody bird changed directions. Harry continued flying after it until it eventually descended. Harry followed after it and saw it heading towards a man who was walking along the desert. Harry quickly transformed in midair and pulled out the vial before waving his wand and sending the wand back in the vial. All under 5 seconds, and before he turned back into his animagus form, Harry flew around the man. He was dressed in black shoes and trousers. Both looked worn out. He also wore a dark green tank top with a blue circular symbol at the chest. His arms were covered in dirt, blood, and had a couple of small burns. His head was covered by what looked like a ripped up brown jacket, but Harry could see his face and saw that it was Stark, thinner and with more red-shot eyes, but it was without doubt Stark. Go away, Tony said tiredly as he tried to swat at Harry. I don't have food. And I'm not food, he added before he stopped walking to cough violently. Harry allowed himself a small mental sigh before he landed behind Stark and transformed back into his human form. Harry hit Tony with a stunner and quickly caught him before he could fall on the floor. On Portkey later, and Harry considered his job done. Virginia Potts, also known as Pepper Potts, dried her tears with a tissue as she sat watching the news channel, hoping to see something about Tony. Hoping for news about him being alive, she kept her phone close to her in case she would get a call from someone with news, preferably something about him being alive and well. She had talked with every law department that she thought could help. Continuing with her job was a struggle and much harder than before, even without the fact that she had nobody to work for. She was far too emotional to properly think about work. After some time learning nothing important, she turned off the TV. She checked her phone one last time. After going through her messages and emails, she sighed. Since she still hadn't learnt anything new, she had stood up and walked to her bathroom. A few minutes later she had came out and went to her bed. She had just climbed into bed and was about to place her head on the pillow when suddenly her phone began ringing. She sighed and picked up the phone. Yes, she asked in a tired voice. Miss Potts, he's been found. What? Pepper gasped. Mr. Stark has been found. Tell me everything now, Pepper demanded. A knock was heard on the door. Harry got up and walked towards the door. He opened it to reveal Natasha standing outside his apartment with a pizza box in her hand. She was wearing blue shoes, blue jeans and a gray shirt under an open white jacket. Harry, on the other hand, looked very different as he was simply wearing blue tracksuit bottoms and a gray shirt. I brought pizza, she grinned as she gestured to the box. Do I have to pay for it? Harry raised an eyebrow. No, can I eat it? Yes. Get the fuck in. Harry stepped to the side and gestured her to come in. Thanks, she said as she came in. Cheapskate, she said quietly under her breath. I heard that. Apparently not quietly enough. Hi Padfoot. Natasha smiled at Padfoot, who was sat on the floor by the sofa. Padfoot barked back in greeting. Sometimes I think he likes you more than me, Harry commented as he closed the door behind him. Natasha had made a habit to occasionally come after she or Harry competed missions. Harry was sure that part of it was information gathering or trying to analyze him, or at least started that way, but somehow she had come enough times for it to become something he was no longer bothered about. Padfoot also seemed to enjoy her company, and she was sometimes the longest conversation he would have in a month. Smart boy, Natasha smirked as she sat down while Harry brought a pair of fizzy drink cans from his fridge. He sat down next to her and placed it down just as Natasha opened it up to reveal a mouth-watering and delicious-looking pizza. I wouldn't mind a thank you, Natasha commented as she took a slice. Chapter 28, The Ghost Story. You'll get your thank you when I get thanked for the curly fries that I brought you last time, Harry replied as he took his own slice. The pizza is your thank you, she replied after taking a bite. Well, in that case it cancels out the need to thank you, Harry replied as he also began eating. Natasha said as she swallowed her bite. By the way, have you reported to Fury about Stark? I'm going to talk to him tomorrow, Harry answered. I had found Stark in a desert before I knocked him out. Why did you knock him out? Natasha frowned. Because if I didn't, then I would have to talk to him, and I talk enough as it is, Harry replied. Really? She gave him a look that mirrored her question. I talk with you, Harry shrugged. You could talk more, she commented. You could talk less, and I could also donate my body and all my money to science, Harry softly snorted. What about you? Any interesting missions lately? Going on one in 2 days. I'll be in France and spying on a French crime lord, so the usual then. Pretty much. Natasha nodded. You ever been to France? She asked. A couple of times. Harry nodded. Do you speak any French? Natasha asked in French. A little bit. Harry replied. Do you speak any other languages? She asked curiously. Do you ever get bored of trying to learn more about me? Harry rolled his eyes. You're a mystery. Natasha shrugged in a, what can you do? Style. And I do need a hobby. Might I suggest dancing or video games or something a bit more normal? I'm a spy and you are a white-haired enhanced who goes by the name of Grim. Normal isn't a word I'd associate with either of us. Touché. Though if I did play video games then I reckon I'd be better than you, Natasha said with a playful smile. I would kick your ass so hard and far that it wouldn't even be funny, Harry replied. Want to bet? Loser pays for the next dinner. Deal, but only if you give me an hour to practice. Deal. Hi boy, Harry said to Padfoot as he returned home after giving his report to Fury. How are you doing? Harry asked as he stroked Padfoot's head. Padfoot barked in response. Good, you haven't been chasing any more cats, have you? Harry asked only to receive an indignant bark. Whatever. Harry chuckled as he sat on the sofa and turned the TV on. Woof, Padfoot barked. One sec. Harry said as the news channel came on to reveal a press conference involving Tony Stark. Stark appeared to be sitting down with a burger in his hand while a bald man with a gray beard was sitting next to him. Harry recognized the man as Obadiah Stane. I never got to say goodbye to Dad, Tony said to Obadiah before looking towards the reporters and the cameras. I never got to say goodbye to my father. There are questions I would ask him. I would ask him about what this company did, if he was conflicted or if he had doubts or maybe he really was just man we all remember. Tony paused as a pained look came on his face. I saw young Americans killed by the very weapons I created to defend and protect them, and I saw that I had become part of a system that had become comfortable with zero accountability. Mr. Stark, what happened over there? One reporter asked. Two had my eyes opened, Tony said as he stood up and walked behind the podium. I came to realize that I have more to offer this world than just making things that blow up, and that is why effective immediately I am shutting down the weapons manufacturing division of Stark International. The reporters quickly jumped to their feet and began asking questions while Obadiah began trying to get Tony off the stage. Well, Harry looked towards Padfoot. That made things interesting. Woof, woof, yeah. Suppose it's not really our business. My job was just to rescue him. Woof. You're still not getting a phone. Talk to me, Jarvis, Tony said as he sat downstairs in his lab. Tony had a lot of things to think about. Not just the direction of his company but also what he would do from now on. They hadn't even invited him to his own company party. He knew that they were unhappy about his decision to stop making weapons, but he couldn't change his mind. He couldn't just go back to his party days and drink it all away. He had a mission now. He had to be better than before. Hopefully he would make Yinsen proud. It still hurt Tony knowing that the man died so he could escape that stupid cave, but for the moment Tony's thoughts were stuck on his rescuer. He remembered waking in the desert after he escaped using his suit. He had been tired, thirsty and hungry, but he knew that he would have still been able to keep walking for much longer. Tony had been knocked out before, mostly from drinking, but when he fell unconscious he remembered getting hit by something in the back. He was sure of it. I have one thing that may interest you, Sir Jarvis, Tony's AI system said. I have something that may interest you. What is it? Tony asked. It's Grim, sir, Jarvis replied. What is your rescuer's name? Grim, Jarvis answered. I highly doubt that it's his real name, but that is the only name I can come up with, Jarvis said as several files appeared on Tony's screen. His name is Grim. Tony snorted in amusement as he accessed the files and spent some time reading whatever he could. To Tony's surprise, there was only very few files on him and very little information in those files. There was not even a single picture of him. However, the very little information that was available did interest Tony greatly. This Grim guy had only been on the scene for about a year or so. The earliest thing that Tony could find on him involved him killing over 100 people in one night. Everything from the guy's name to his abilities was being kept a secret, and Tony found that especially odd for an intelligence organization. The guy is a total ghost story, Tony commented. Indeed, Jarvis agreed. I highly doubt he is the sort of person you can simply call and invite over for a drink. S.H.I.E.L.D. knows about him. Or at least a few people in S.H.I.E.L.D. do, Tony said thoughtfully. What kind of tech and connections must the guy have had access to if he is able to kill so many people in a single night? Tony wondered. And why is it that there is barely any information on him at all? I don't know, sir, Shall I assume that you wish to find out? You know me so well, Jarvis. Tony smirked. Chapter 29 Clash of Titans. Harry was enjoying a nice ride on his motorbike. He was wearing black boots, blue jeans, a gray shirt under a black leather jacket, and he also had on a pair of black gloves and a helmet. As Harry was driving, he received a call. He answered it using his earpiece. What do you want? Harry asked. It's me, Coulson. Coulson's voice replied. Do me a favor because I really need Grim right now. There's a situation at Stark Industries. What kind? Harry asked as he changed directions and started driving towards Stark Industries, which was fortunately quite close to where he was now. Harry activated a set of runes that he had built into his bike, and the bike speeded up beyond its usual speed. It was much like the night bus in Harry's opinion, just much more comfortable. Obadiah Stane is trying to kill us, Coulson said, his voice as calm as ever. Despite the situation, you guys can't handle one man? Harry asked with disbelief, knowing there was more to it than that. Not when he is in a giant suit of armor. Coulson replied. We need you to try and stop it before any civilians get hurt. On it, Harry said just before noticing something up ahead. He saw what looked like a giant gray robot battling with a regular-sized red and yellow robot. Though if one of them was Stane in a suit, then Harry figured that that meant the other one was also a man in a suit. Apparently they were no longer inside the Stark building. I see two suits, one gray and one red. Which one do you want me to go after? Harry asked. The gray one. Coulson answered. You got it. Call you back. Harry ended the call before speeding up. Harry pulled out a gun just before he slowed down and stopped his bike. Harry activated a portkey feature he had in on his bike and sent it away. Harry walked towards the two just as the gray one, who Harry guessed was Stane, stomped on top of the red one. Harry aimed his gun and shot two bullets that bounced off Stane's helmet but was able to succeed in getting his attention. Really? Stane chuckled as he looked at him. Run. Whoever was in the red suit shouted. I'm giving you one warning, Harry said to Stane. Stand down. Didn't you hear me? The guy in the red suit shouted with disbelief. Oh, don't worry, Tony, Stane said as he kicked the red-suited man away. I'll make it quick, Tony. Oh fucking hell, you're telling me that is Stark? Harry sighed. Friend of yours, Tony? Stane asked before looking in Harry's direction. I'm giving you one warning. Stand down, Stane said, echoing Harry's earlier words, and Harry could tell he was smiling under the suit. Well, at least nobody will say I didn't give you a chance, Harry said as he aimed the gun at Stane's head. He discreetly activated the runes he had placed on the gun. Harry had spent a lot of experimenting on runes for his gun. This particular gun had various runes, including runes that would stay active such as self-cleaning runes and runes to prevent it from running out of bullets. The runes that Harry had just activated were more destructive. Oh, this'll be fun, Stane laughed. Bring it, half pint, Stane taunted. Consider it brought, Harry replied before he fired. The bullet pierced through the air before it crashed against Stane's helmet and exploded. Stane stumbled back from the force of the explosion. Harry followed up with 3 more bullets, which caused Stane to take a few steps back. Once Harry had stopped firing, Stane was still standing and his suit didn't appear to look very damaged or even damaged. That's just pissed me off, Stane said before he raised his left arm and a machine gun rose out and was aimed at Harry. You failed me, Harry whispered disappointedly to his gun before he jumped out of the way as Stane began firing. Harry quickly got behind a car, barely avoiding getting shot, but Harry didn't stay still as he knew that the car wouldn't offer much protection against a gun that powerful. Harry teleported and landed on the bus behind Stane. Harry switched his gun out for his wand and fired a blasting spell that hit Stane in the back. Stane stumbled forwards and nearly tripped but managed to barely stay standing. He growled and turned around. He raised both of his arms and tried to slam down on Harry, only for Harry to jump to the side. It was lucky that he did, as Stane had crushed the part of the bus he smashed. Harry jumped on top of Stane to avoid another strike. Harry jumped off but managed to shoot Stane before landing. As Harry landed, he rolled into a standing position and turned back to face Stane. Harry aimed his wand at him. 3 red beams shot out of it and headed into the air before spiraling down and striking Stane in the chest and making him fall onto the bus. What the hell is that? A voice said behind Harry. Harry turned and nearly shot Stark, who had raised his hands to show he was not going to attack. Wait. Peace. Peace, Stark said quickly. Damn it, Stark. Harry sighed before he looked back at Stane. Who the hell are you? And what the hell is that stick in your hand? Tony asked. Chapter 30 Unexpected Ally. Who the hell are you? And what the hell is that stick in your hand? Tony asked. Ask later. What are your offensive capabilities? Harry asked. Running low on power, so not great. Tony replied. Especially when you consider the fact that it is also keeping me alive. Tony added, almost as an afterthought, is that your power source? Harry asked as he gestured to the blue circle in his chest. Yeah, why? Try this, Harry said as he aimed his wand and sent a small amount of magic into it. Power has increased by 2%. Tony heard Jarvis in his earpiece. What was that? Tony asked immediately. Did it work? Harry asked impatiently. Yeah, apparently so. Tony nodded quickly. Good, Harry said before he sent more magic into Tony's power source. Power is up to 30%. Jarvis informed Tony Harry was going to put in more but decided to place his focus on Stain, who was walking towards them. It looks like you have made a new friend, Tony, Stain said. He can die alongside you, Stain said before he aimed his arm gun at the two. Stain fired but didn't hit anything as Harry had quickly grabbed Tony and teleported them out of harm's way. You can teleport. Tony gasped. You ever stop asking questions? An irritated Harry asked before he jumped on top of a car and began moving towards Stain, who was still looking for him. Harry cast an animation charm on a nearby car and had it charge straight into Stain's legs. Stain was taken by surprise but quickly grabbed the car and raised it in the air. Harry shot a spell at the car and it exploded, sending a surprised Stain backwards and causing him to land on his back. Harry cast a featherweight charm on Stain, removing all weight from him. Harry followed up by levitating him in the air before he slammed him down hard on the ground. Harry repeated this 2 more times before he raised Stain even higher and cancelled the featherweight charm, allowing Stain to fall straight to the ground. Give up, Harry said as he blasted Stain when he tried to get up. Not a chance in hell. Stain growled before he ripped a piece of the concrete beneath him from the ground with his hand and chucked it at Harry. Harry, who was prepared for this, quickly jumped to the side and was about to fire a spell only to see Stain's arm gun aimed at him. Harry quickly put up a shield which blocked the bullets, but there was little Harry could do until Stain had run out of bullets, as Harry's entire focus was on the shield, because if he let it go then he would be filled with bullets and Harry did not want that to happen. Believe it or not, Stain's enthusiastic shooting was interrupted from a blast from above. Harry looked up and saw Stark flying above them with one hand aimed at Stain. Stain prepared his gun to fire just as his left shoulder pads parted to allow a missile launcher to rise. Stain was about to fire when he noticed several people a short distance away filming them using their phones. Tell me, heroes, Stain said. You can fight, but how good are you at saving people? Stain aimed his missile launcher at them and fired a missile launcher at the civilians. Harry, if he had more time, would have probably pulled out his own hair and ranted several hours about dumbass people with phones, but sadly did not have the time. Harry quickly cast a shield over them. Even if Darwin suggested they die, Harry's shield blocked the missile, but the shield broke and sent the people back onto their butts. Stain quickly took advantage and fired his gun at Harry, who used his other hand to form a wandless shield just as Stark fired a repulsor blast at Stain. Stark's blast hit Stain just as Stain's bullets pierced through Harry. No. Stark cried as he quickly descended down and landed next to Harry. Fuck. Stark cursed as he kneeled down and looked at Harry, who had been pierced by multiple bullets. Since Harry's wandless shield wasn't as powerful as his regular shield, Harry had blood pouring out his left thigh, 2 bullet holes in his stomach, a 4th in his chest, a 5th in his shoulder, and a 6th that had pierced through his helmet's visor. All had gone clean through his body. Oh, Tony, Stain chuckled. Make a friend. Lose a friend. You always love to do things fast, but this is ridiculous. Stark was about to reply with some very angry words when Harry suddenly sat up, shocking Stain and frightening Stark, who definitely did not expect that. Holy shit. Stark jumped back and onto his feet. Harry growled as he stood up. Once he was standing, his blood returned back into his body as his wounds healed. Harry walked forwards just as his clothes shifted into his grim uniform. Starting from the feet and heading upwards, Harry removed the helmet just as his hood came up and stopped his face from being seen. I am beyond pissed off. Grim spoke in his demonic voice. Wow. Tony said, more to himself. Stain raised his gun and aimed it at Grim, who quickly shot a spell at the gun, causing it to explode. Stain tripped back and looked down at his now damaged arm. Damn. Stain cursed. Little prick. Stain growled before he aimed his shoulder missile. Grim. He fired a missile at Grim. Grim shot the missile with a spell, causing it to explode in midair. Grim span his wand in a circle and a whip made of lighting wrapped around Stain's head, damaging his suit. I will kill you. Stain roared as he charged towards Grim at a surprising speed for one so large. Grim cut off the whip and blasted Stain's feet, causing him to fall forwards on his face. Stain growled as he got up to his feet only for Stark to blast him. As Stain stepped back, Harry blasted Stain's damaged arm. Stain quickly called upon a rocket launcher in his other arm and fired it at Stark, who dodged. Grim fired a spell at the weapon and much like the previous one it exploded, damaging Stain's robot arm and resulted in his actual arm being burnt. Stain cried out in pain. "What the hell are you?" Stain demanded angrily as he spoke to Grim. "It won't matter since you're dead." Grim aimed his wand at Stain's exposed arm and cast the killing curse, which struck true and killed Stain. From Tony's perspective, he saw a green light shoot out of the stick that Grim was holding and hit Stain. A second later, he watched as Stain fell to the floor. "What the hell happened?" Tony said as he flew down and landed next to Harry. "He is dead," Grim replied. "What? How?" "He died," Grim replied before he turned and began walking away. "Wait a sec. Who are you?" Tony called out, but Grim didn't answer. He just continued walking and teleported away.
Another tale fades into the silence. But here, in the fantasy audiobook library, stories never sleep. Subscribe and return when your heart seeks adventure. We'll be waiting.